I'll share my screen and pull up the minutes. Yeah. Can everyone see that all okay?
Yep.
Yeah, we can.
Awesome. So I'm also acting as clerk at the moment, so I'm multitasking. But with that, the first annual meeting of CUSA Council will be called to order. I'll be presiding as per Section 6 of the Speaker Terms of Reference. So before we begin, before we begin with regular business, I'd like to acknowledge that we are today gathered on the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe, lands never ceded or surrendered in peace to the Crown of Canada. Indigenous peoples living under the modern colonial state of Canada have suffered disproportionate injustice and marginalization, and mere land acknowledgement is not enough to make reconciliation and reparation to the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. We must stand in solidarity against colonialism and remember our responsibility to the land and the people who have kept it for generations, which means affirming their call for free and unencumbered return to their ancestral land. It is also fitting, this body of lawmakers, to remember the spirit and wisdom of Indigenous governance models, from the collaborative bicameralism of the Haudenosaunee Confederation, the consensus-based government of the Inuit, to deliver to students a better student union. So, with that, we'll move to our first order of business, which is CO1, election of the speaker. So, after we have opened, the speaker hiring committee was called a few weeks back. We opened applications for Speaker of Council. After interviewing candidates, the committee came to a decision to recommend Mark Deneau to the position of Speaker. However, as per the Speaker Terms of Reference, candidates are also allowed to nominate themselves on the floor. So is there anyone who would like to nominate themselves for the position of Speaker besides Mark? If so, raise your hand. All right. Seeing none, can I get a motion to amend the motion at hand? Councillor Dana? Sorry, Councillor, were you going to...
Sorry, I'm moving. My bad.
I first need someone to amend the motion to put Mark's name in there.
Okay, well, can I move for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I get a seconder just to amend that? Sarah?
Seconded.
All right. And then all those in favor, anyone against putting Mark's name in there? Seeing none. All right. With that, we will now be moving to voting on this motion. So be it resolved that Mark Deneau be elected as Speaker of Council. Can I get a mover for the motion? Councillor Dana. And if you're moving, please raise your hand in the chat so it will pop up, and then Clara. All right. All right. With that, Mark, you have the floor to make a 5-minute address to council.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, VP Internal, for allowing me to speak on this matter, and also to the hiring committee for endorsing me this time around. So my name is Mark Deneau. I'm currently entering into my third year of Architectural Conservation Sustainability Engineering, and this will also be my second second term on council. So over the past year on CUSA, I was an active member where I participated and amended many motions on council, but also on committee as well. During that time, I've grown to love, but also I identified a couple of weaknesses that I believe that CUSA has and also the CUSA operation holds. Now, throughout my extensive experience as a student leader, I wish to bring this experience onto the role of speaker in order to make the role of speaker not only as a chair, but also as a position of leadership on council. Now, let me tell you a little bit about some of my experience. Over the past year, I've been on ESCO, which is the Engineering Student Society's Council of Ontario, where we represent roughly 50,000 students, and I was representing them as a commissioner of engagement. I created engagement strategies for member schools to reach students across Ontario, which could be proving to be quite challenging, but the goal was always to have a more engaged student base, which is something I intend on doing here as speaker, is engaging counselors and the student at large a lot more. I critically analyzed council operations, which led also to the creation of our long-term vision and plan, where we increased collaboration between different vice presidents and also officers and commissioners. I've also been a long-term member of Engineers Without Borders, the Carleton chapter, where I'm currently the co-president, but I've held many positions since first year. I've had facilitating experience for the meetings, and I've also now recently reviewed the meeting agenda in order to create a more streamlined experience for councillors to be able to voice their opinion more effectively. I've also been a parliamentary tour guide this past year, where I've had, during the role and working on the Hill, I had to remain nonpartisan, and I also managed groups in order to keep the tour going and keep the conversation between different parties with their various opinions going as well. Now, as I mentioned in introduction, I really want to extend the role of speaker, which means increasing accountability, engagement, and visibility, not only for the student body, but also for the counselors itself. As a counselor this past year, I felt like I didn't have the adequate tools to effectively and confidently voice my opinions and write motions, and this is something I want to see change this year, so more counselors feel able and capable to be able to voice their opinions and write their own motions and critically analyze any comments from the VPs. In terms of accountability, I think students at large want to see a lot more, they want to know a lot more what's happening within CUSA and how their voice is heard. And this is important because counselors need to be more engaged. And so this is something that I want to ensure that counselors do this year, and as a speaker to support them. I also like to increase visibility, which means more engagement strategies, perhaps interactive content that counselors can help and participate in. Finally, it would be with engagement, so working with a VP internal in order to support council effectively. On this note, I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me this opportunity, and I hope I can count on your vote to be speaker this year to make an engaging and successful year for all of council. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. At this point, I'll open the floor if anyone would like to have any debate or pose any questions to Mark.
I have a question, but I don't really know how to properly word this.
Go ahead.
Mark, you mentioned something about how being a council member, you weren't allowed to voice your opinion in the way that you wanted to, and that's what you want to bring, I guess, with being the new speaker. Like, you don't have to dive into, like, you don't have to dive into the details of it, but what do you mean that you are allowed to voice your opinions, and how would you like to change that? Like, what specifics are you putting in place to be able to change that based on your personal experience? But yeah.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Halumi. So I think we might have misunderstood each other maybe a little bit. It's not that I wasn't allowed, not at all. It's actually, I didn't necessarily feel that the tools provided were sufficient enough in order for a counselor to feel sufficiently comfortable, especially at the start, in order to comment on motions, write on motions. Now, what I intend to bring to the position itself in order to remediate this is not only to support the VP internal, but to be a presence there, and also to make the council more engaging and more open, which means that oftentimes there's there's policies that needs to be reviewed every couple of years. So perhaps this would be about adding more visibility on which policies needs to be changed and modified, so councillors can jump in and help to amend them and modify them as well. So this is just one of the examples that I intend to bring.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move into voting. As per the speaker terms of reference, this has to be a secret ballot. And well, due to the fact that I lack a better system to do this, I'm going to ask every counselor to private message me on Zoom and tell me their vote. I know, I thought about doing a Google form as well, but after consultation with the exec, we thought, you know what, this is the best we got right now. So please just you can go in on the chat and it says to everyone, click that and just go to me and message me either for or against. If you don't want to respond at all, you can abstain. With that, I'll give like 10 more seconds for any final votes. All right, seeing none, the vote is in order. So congratulations, Mark. You've been elected as speaker for this year.
Thank you all.
So I'll wrap up with deputy speaker elections, and then I will hand it over to Mark to continue for the rest of the meeting. All right. All right, moving on, we have item 3, which is election of deputy speaker. So the committee ultimately decided to recommend Joanna. Sorry, Joanna, how do I pronounce your last name?
It's Olagoke Daniel, but you don't have to worry about it. Just say O Daniel or just my name, it's fine.
All right, so Joanna has been recommended to the position of deputy speaker by the committee. Are there any other individuals who would like to nominate themselves? All right, seeing none, can I get someone just motion to amend the motion? Aiden? Awesome, can I get a seconder on that?
I'll second.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Perfect. Can I get a mover for the motion? Aiden. And Dana. All right, with that, Joanna, you have the floor if you'd like to make any kind of remarks.
I don't have a lot to say, but
You don't have to.
my name's
I'll say go ahead.
Joanna Olagoke Daniel. I'm going into my 4th year of a program called Interdisciplinary Science and Practice. I minor in biology. Last year, I was part of CUSA as a chunk. So I've been around a little bit, but I like to push myself. And so I want to be deputy speaker so I can learn more and gain more experience. I will try my best to make this like a space, like Mark was saying earlier, where we all can like have our voices heard and like issues that matter to us as students are brought not just in the council meeting, but like further to the faculty and whoever needs to hear it. And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to even be nominated. And I look forward to this if I am elected. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions?
Not a question, Aiden, but can you just fix my last name on the agenda? I'm sorry, I hate to be that
Oh,
guy.
I know it was wrong. I was just going to go back and fix it after.
Okay.
It will be fixed. Don't worry.
Okay, just making sure.
All right. Any other questions besides fixing Aiden's last name? All right. Seeing none, we'll go into voting. Same process as before. Please just private message me your vote. All other votes will be done publicly and a lot faster. This is the last one of that matter. So just please private message me for or against. Give like 5 more seconds for any final votes. With 15 in favor and 1 opposed, Joanna is elected Deputy Speaker. With that, I'll hand over the meeting to Speaker Deneau. I'll make you co-host. Do you want to just share your screen and continue on with the agenda, Mark?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Give me 1 sec.
Okay.
Okay, can everybody see the screen? Yes, okay, great. All right, so first of all, thank you all. It might be a little shaky meeting, but I got this wonderful book, so we'll be good to go for the next one afterwards. So we'll now move on to the approval of the agenda, so C-03. Be it resolved that the, yes, Dana? Yes, Councillor Dana.
Can you zoom in a little? I can't really see that well.
Yeah. Is that better?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sweet. Thanks so much for letting me know. So be it resolved that the agenda be approved as presented to council, notwithstanding section 18 of the council rules of order. Can I get a mover? Councillor Kalinoen. And please let me know how to pronounce the last names. I'll get to it. I'll be good to go afterwards. And can I get a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Clara de Oliveira. Okay, do we have any debate on this motion? Okay. See, as there's none, I will go for a vote. All those in favor, if you can raise your hand on Zoom. Anyone, Eden, do you have enough time to count or good? You good? Okay. Anybody against the motion? Okay. See, as there's none, this motion is carried. We'll now move on to approval of the past minutes C-04 for the AGM Part 3, which happened on the 8th of April. Be it resolved that the minutes of AGM 3 of Council be approved. Can I get a mover? Councillor Sakiba. And can I get a seconder? We're going to go with Councillor Ola Gunju. Does anybody wish to speak on this motion? See, as there are none, we'll now be going through a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those, okay, perfect. All those against, please raise your hand. Seeing as there are none, this motion is carried. We will now be moving on to presentations and delegations, as there is one present for the CUSA Council Training of 2024-2025. I'll give the floor to VP Internal, Eden Wojcik.
Thank you very much. All right, guys. So this will be kind of our introduction to council training. This year, instead of going through a whole day process, I thought I'd try and kind of just distill it down to an hour for everybody. So I've given myself 60 minutes, hopefully sooner than that, to go through everything. My plan is to kind of do some more training throughout the year, maybe focus a bit more on motions at one meeting, a bit more on speaking at another. But this one will kind of try to be your crash course, so you have at least kind of a general idea of what you're supposed to be doing. So here, I'll share my screen and just go through with everybody.
I see Sarah has her hand up. Sarah, do you have any points to bring? Okay.
No, that's my bad, actually.
All right, with that, I'll get started. We have council training for this year prepared by me. So just kind of go through a table of contents. We'll go through the intro, some general info about CUSA, then talking about your duties as a counselor. We'll go through motion writing. I have a little activity. We'll be writing a motion together. And then it's debate and then agenda, actually, but we should go with that pretty quickly. So this kind of just introduction to CUSA for many of you. So just for a brief history, we were formed in 42 at the tail end of the war to accompany students coming back. We were incorporated as our own entity in 1968, and we reincorporated and reformed to CUSA we know now with council and the board and new bylaws in 2022. So we're fairly new. We're the third iteration under this new corporation. So just a bit about us. We're an incorporated not-for-profit organization that exists to enhance student experience at Carleton. So we're not attached to the university at all. We are our own separate corporation in the eyes of the government. We collaborate and are tied to the university through a series of agreements, but we are our own corporate entity. We have 5 executives, 11 board members, and 35 members of council. And then we have 3 businesses. So we have our bar, Ollie's, our coffee shop, Roosters, and then Haven, our off-campus coffee shop. And then we run 7 service centers. So I'll just kind of give you guys a rundown of the organization here. So basically, we have council, the executives, and the board. And so there's a lot of questions about, where does council fall in? Where does the board come in? And I always like to think of the analogy that they're 2 sides of the same coin, where council oversees CUSA, the student government body, and the board oversees CUSA, the corporation. So I'll talk a bit more about the duties here, but council generally oversees issue stances and more political things, whereas the board oversees a lot more business operations, human resources, legal, that kind of thing. But just to kind of give you a breakdown, the president is kind of the link between the two. And then we have our VPs and AVPs underneath that. This is a little outdated, so we have 7 AVPs now. And the individual that's responsible for overseeing all of our full-time staff is the director of operations, no longer executive director, but his name is Sam Kilgore. And he's our link to all of our full-time staff members. Under our full-time staff, all of our full-time staff are unionized under QP 3011. And then all of our part-time staff, so that would be our businesses and then our service center staff, are all unionized under QP 1281. So this is kind of just a breakdown. This is good to look back to if you're ever confused about, the jurisdiction of organizations here. But yeah. So you all been elected to council. Some of you, this is your first time. For others, you're returning. The big question is, now what? So just to kind of a rundown on what council is, it is the primary and highest decision-making body within CUSA. So most important decisions usually should go through council unless otherwise delegated to the board. But ultimately, council has the final say on mostly everything. So council, our main policies day to day are advocacy. So any advocacy stances we publish, as well as student issue positions and other kind of political things of that nature. We also share the responsibility of executive accountability with the board. So it is the job of council and the board to make sure that executives are being held accountable and doing their job. I just added here, ultimately, everything falls to council. So there might be decisions where people bring forward motions and we say, oh, this is actually board jurisdiction. And while that is true, the board ultimately serves at the pleasure of council. So council is the highest body within the organization, and what council says goes. I'll just add, though, if anyone ever wants to kind of go against the decision of the board, we can't necessarily overrule the board. Our decision would be to fire the entire board and get a new one. So if anyone's ever thinking about, oh, I'm not completely happy with what the board is doing, that's our course of action in that, because we ultimately elect board directors. So they serve for us. So ultimately, when people ask, what can council do? What can I do as a counselor? The answer is everything. So your duties as counselors are, you're supposed to kind of be a voice for students in your faculty. The executives usually don't come from are not always from every single faculty and can't possibly understand the voices of every single student. So that is where you all come in. We're responsible for connecting with students in your faculty and faculty members to gain insights into their needs, what needs to be done, and then to consult with student initiatives and bring those issues to us. And I always like to think at the end of the day, your vote is not your own. It is representative of the students that elected you to be here. So you're not voting for yourself, but you're voting for all the people within your faculty. So how can you support students? The big thing is make sure you're working with your faculties to bring change initiatives to CUSA. So talk to people in your faculty, hear what they want to do, see if there's any initiatives or events or programming that they want to see CUSA done, and bring it to CUSA. Talk about it at council, talk about it in committees, and bring it forward through motions, which we'll talk about motions and everything later. But make sure you're really working to bring these issues to us. Make sure you're reporting to council about the needs of your faculty so CUSA can act accordingly. Because that's really the only way that CUSA is going to be able to respond to the needs of students is through all of you telling us, what we actually need to do. And the big thing is you're supposed to act as a liaison between CUSA staff, so that includes the executives and all the full-time and part-time staff, as well as the students you represent. So if someone wants to see something in Roosters, a new food item, or you want to talk about, programming at the service centers, if you want to do something about our staff, you have to go. Your job as a counselor is to bring it to council. So, what are your responsibilities as an elected official? Big thing. I can't stress this enough. Attend council meetings. Show up. If you miss one meeting, if you're missing a meeting at all, you need to send regrets or a proxy. Regrets is basically just letting me know in advance and not like an hour before, but like letting me know a day or two that you'll be coming. And it would be best if you could find a proxy. A proxy is an individual who's a counselor that will basically vote on your behalf. Yeah, Palumi? Do you have a question?
I don't know why it took me so long to unmute. My bad.
No
I'm
worries.
just wondering, if you send in a proxy or regrets, does that count towards the 3 that can get you removed or
No,
not?
it does not.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Granted, if you're always calling in for a proxy every single meeting, the speaker might message you and be like, hey, what's up? But we understand that people have things that come up. So as long as you're letting us know and finding someone to come in your stead, that's completely okay. Just don't make it a habit of proxying for every single meeting.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Other big thing is you have to join at least one committee and attend meetings. I'll talk a lot more about committees later, but they're basically kind of working groups within the organization. Also, if you're going to message, I can't see the chat as it's going. So if you guys have any questions, just please raise your hand. But yeah, make sure you're joining. You'll be, yes, Councillor Ahmed, Sayed Ahmed.
Just letting you know that like the sun is directly behind you and you kind of look like you're in a microwave.
Oh.
Just letting you know.
I'll fix that. We good now? Okay, no longer in the microwave. But other big responsibility is just to represent your faculty students. So make an effort to talk with people in your faculty, with people in your program, so you know what's going on and you can properly represent their voices. And the last thing, which I bolded for a reason, is keep the executive and the board accountable. Because if you don't do it, nobody else will. The board often has a lot more of a smaller scope in terms of what they'll look at. So if it really comes to making sure that we're all doing our jobs, that falls to all of you. Students put you here because they don't always have the time to pay attention to everything that's going on. So they give that out to all of you to make sure we're doing our job. And if you think something's weird or something wasn't done properly, it seems a little fishy, say something. Even if you're not sure, it's better that you say something than if you don't, because once again, if you don't say something, nobody else will. So drive that home. Even if it feels a little uncomfortable, please ask hard questions, because it really is your job to make sure that we're doing our jobs. So as an elected official, you get a couple rights. Big one is speaking rights. So for those of you here for the divestment motion, it was a whole thing because students at large do not always inherently have speaking rights. You as counselors do. So you can speak on any motion or any point on the agenda, and that is a right you're afforded as a counselor. You also get the rights to move and second motions, which we'll talk a bit more about later, but basically a motion needs to be moved and seconded before it can even be debated. And finally, have a vote. And that's honestly the most important right you have. So you get to elect vice presidents with that. You get to elect the board of directors. And then I kind of just took this right out of our bylaws. So you have the jurisdiction to generate, modify, repeal, and manage policies and procedures for advocacy and student interest positions and policies. Basically, you have a vote, and that's a very powerful thing in council. So the question now is, you have a vote, you can vote on motions. What are motions? Basically, it's how everything gets done. Anything and everything, if you want council to decide on something, it must be a motion. So motions are voted on by council. Depending on what it is, it might require more people to vote or less. Normally, it's a simple majority. For certain things, such as amending the agenda once it's been set, or amending the bylaws, you may require unanimous consent or 2/3. Shorter motions can be spoken out, and they will usually begin with "I move that," insert here. So for example, if there's a motion on the table and you don't like the particular wording, you want to change something, you can say, "Oh, I move to amend the motion and to strike this clause here or to change the item." You can also move to end debate or to introduce an item. I move to amend the agenda and add this motion that I had written before. But the big thing comes into longer motions that mostly written out. And this is where kind of the fun around motion writing really happens. I will note that I will be providing everyone with kind of a cheat sheet later on different motions that you're allowed to make, kind of the smaller ones that can be brought up. So that'll be something I'll make with the speaker and circulate before the next meeting. So longer motions need to be written out. If you guys looked at the agenda, this is an example of those longer form motions. And big thing is, people a lot of the times last year asked me, "Oh, I didn't really know what I could do. What could I use a motion for?" And these are your examples. And when I say everything, I basically mean everything. So you can do something in terms of amending, so creating a new policy, amending an existing one, or getting rid of it. You can amend the bylaws. You can create new committees. You can call elections, impeach people, do referendums. You can also order the executives and our staff to do things. So for example, if you want the VP Finance to do something, you want myself to do something, you can always ask, but you're also welcome to make a motion, in which case we have to do it. And you're also welcome to express an opinion. So any kind of our advocacy stances or issue stances, those are examples of that, where CUSA is voting to, as an association, express an opinion on something. So these are the big things that motions can be used for. But basically, if you want to do anything whatsoever, and you can do whatever you want, just make sure it can be done through a motion. There's a couple things that you're, not allowed to do in terms of if you're violating our existing rules, that can be ruled out of order by the speaker. Additionally, if you're making a motion and the whole point is just to kind of delay and stall time, they can rule it out of order. You're also not allowed to, if a motion passes, to then turn around and then try and discuss it or amend it all over again. Once it's passed, it's done for the day. You are allowed to bring it up at a different meeting, but you can't do that in the same one. Oftentimes, the speaker is allowed to weigh in and be like, "Hey, you might want to change this wording here just to make a little bit more sense and make it a little bit more realistic." More often than not, do take their advice because it will make the motion a bit more precise. But yeah. Now we get into the big question of how to write motions. And this is something really important to grasp as a counselor, is this is really how you're going to be able to exercise your power. Motions are broken up into two sections, preambulatory clauses and operative clauses. The terminology differs. I'm just stealing this from my Model UN days. Preambulatory clauses don't actually do anything, have no impact. All they do is explain the context behind your motion and provide the reader with reasoning behind bringing this motion forward. You want to set them up in a way that a reader who has no idea what's going on in the meeting can read your preambulatory clauses and understand the context, why are you bringing this forward, and understand your mindset and the frame you're taking to bring this motion forward. And it always begins with the use of whereas. So you'd go whereas and then insert your clause there. You also have operative clauses, and these are the clauses that actually do something. You want to, it's here that you explain what you actually want to get done. So you'll begin with "be it resolved that" and spell out what you actually want to happen, whether that be amending a policy, directing a staff member to do something, calling a referendum. Your operative clauses will go "be it resolved that," insert there. Big thing is, if a motion passes, it becomes the decision and action of CUSA. So if a motion passes at council, all of CUSA has the obligation to make sure that it's seen through. This is an example of how a motion would be set up. So you have your preambles at the beginning, where you go, "whereas this association has no official color," and it's kind of just explaining the rationale behind why you're even bringing this forward. The whereas clauses don't do anything. They're not actionable, but it's so that if you're reading this motion, you can understand why someone wants to make the official CUSA color red. Your "be it resolved" clauses, it's actually wrong and not "be it further ordered," but be it further resolved. But that's where it's actually doing something. So that's declaring that the official color is red, that all full-time staff shall repaint CUSA owned spaces red. So this is how you break it up. If you're trying to make a motion, preambles is you're explaining the background so someone understands why this is being brought forward. And then your operatives, where you're actually spelling out how you want something to be carried out. So I want us to practice as a whole, just making a motion. Someone bring up anything they want to be done. By the way, can you see this doc that I pulled up? Awesome. Bring up, does anyone have an example of something they would want to get done? Anything, it could be silly, it could be serious, whatever. Give me an example. Please. Raise your hand. Yep, Councillor Dana.
Whereas the Panthers and the Oilers game is at 8 p.m. tonight. Whereas it is the Stanley Cup final. Whereas Florida is about to get reverse swept. Be it resolved, council must finish the meeting by 8 p.m. Be it further resolved, if we can't finish the meeting by 8 p.m., we stream it.
Sure. So the thing here is we want to make sure council ends at a reasonable time. So, whereas the Panthers and Oilers game is on tonight, and then you'd go, and whereas it is the Stanley Cup Finals. And what was the last one? And whereas the Panthers are going to get swept. All right, so for example here, none of this does anything, but it's explaining to you understand, would it be it resolved? So be it resolved that council finishes at 8 o'clock p.m. So this is what we want to do. We want to make sure the council finishes by 8. So all of our whereas clauses are simply explaining that if someone wants to figure out, why did Councilor Dana want to make sure we finished on time? Read and go, oh, the game is on tonight. Oh, it's the finals. The Panthers are going to lose. Oh, that's why they decided to move this. So this is an example of how you'd break down a motion. Your intro clauses are just to make sure someone understands why the be it resolves are here. And just to give a further example, you said be it further resolved that if not, we stream the game. Does not. 8. We stream the game. So this is an example of how you'd format a motion. Obviously, you can always go into far, far more detail and have multiple be it resolved and be it further resolved clauses. The idea is that you usually want it all to be set up like a sentence. So if you're not going to have one be it resolved clause that is like a huge page. Every sentence you usually want to break up into its own separate clause. Now, yeah, are there any questions about how one would write a motion? Does this make sense to everyone? We'll probably do more training in particular on how to do these, but as a general practice, your preambles are the whereas clauses, just explaining context so people understand. Your be it resolved ones are ones that actually are things do stuff that call council to do something. Together, the two things make a motion. Any questions with that? Does that make sense to everybody? If not, please ask questions because this is very, very important for you all to understand. Okay? We'll keep going. So now we get into the question of debate, right? So someone's made a motion, they brought it to council. Now it's time to talk about it. Now, before we can actually go ahead and vote with a motion, unless council decides otherwise, there must be an opportunity to debate. So at CUSA, we follow Robert's Rules of Order. I'll talk more about that later and giving people the books of that. You can usually find it all online. That's the procedure that outlines how we follow debate. In certain circumstances, our policies will override Robert's rules. But if those cases arise, the speaker will let people know. But for most part, if you want to understand how all the different intricacies of all the different specificities of debate, go through Robert's rules. Now, before a motion can actually even be talked about, it needs to be moved and seconded by voting members. So as you kind of saw earlier, for people that are new, we were talking about the motion to approve the agenda. The speaker asked for a mover and a seconder. We need to get a voting member to agree to move it, a voting member to agree to second it, and then debate can begin. It's very important to note that moving or seconding a motion does not indicate support for it at all. It's simply two people voting members agreeing that they just want to hear debate or discussion on this motion in general. Typically, for non-procedural motions, so motions that are not just like approving an agenda, but doing something more important, the mover is usually the author. This is because the mover is usually given preferential speaking rights. So the mover will usually be the person that speaks first if they want to have debate on the motion, but it doesn't have to be. And it's just important that it's two people with votings, both agree, one mover, one seconder, and then debate can begin. So I made a little example here with the motion we did above. It's hypothetical, I would have moved a motion, and then our tour could have seconded it. At that point, that's when the debate will actually begin. If a motion cannot find a mover or a seconder, it will not be considered. Now we get into someone's moved it and seconded it, so we've opened discussion on the ground. Now debate will begin. So usually the speaker will read out the motion so people understand, and then debate will begin. This is something we did not enforce last year, but we should really get into the habit of enforcing this year, is that each member could only speak on a motion twice and for up to 10 minutes. So make sure that when people there's not supposed to be a back and forth where people can ask 3, 4, 5, 6 questions. Each person gets the opportunity to speak twice, after which point, if they want to speak again, they have to move to suspend the rules. Without that, the speaker will rule them out of order if they try to speak, and you only get up to 10 minutes for a maximum of 20 minutes on a motion. So you can't get up and filibuster and just try and talk forever to stop a motion from being talked about. We will be cut off at 10 minutes. So the speaker will only recognize a person to speak after the previous person has finished. Just bringing up priority, the mover usually has priority in speaking. So that goes in terms of usually being able to speak first on a motion, and also they're usually chosen more frequently throughout discussion around a motion. But priority will also only go to those who have not spoken over anyone who has. So for example, if it's 2 counselors or a group of counselors like to bring something up, then a new person raises their hand, the speaker will usually yield to them first, just to go to people who haven't had a chance yet. What's very important is do not speak unless you've been recognized by the speaker. The speaker being like, okay, yes, you can go ahead. This is just to make sure things don't devolve into a bit of chaos and anarchy, and making sure that we have some order into how meetings run. Just to kind of summarize, you can only speak twice, and make sure the speaker gives you the approval before you go ahead and start speaking on a motion. Part 2 is just make sure you're staying on subject. So the speaker will rule you out of order, will basically cut you off if your remarks are not relating to the issue at hand. And another big thing is make sure your debate only follows on the specific motion. Sometimes there'll be amendments or amendments to amendments on a debate about a motion, and people can get bogged down talking about the motion itself. If there's an amendment to a motion, you are only talking about the merits of the amendment itself, not the motion as a whole. Or if you're talking about a motion, you're not going to bring up other issues somewhere else. You're only focusing on the motion at hand, just to make sure things don't get dragged off of topic. So just make sure you're always talking about this very specific motion you're talking about. Big thing about debate is, try to be professional. Debate people's issues and the issue itself. Don't attack individual people. So don't use personal attacks. Don't call people names. Don't yell things that would relatively be considered rude or mean to other individuals. You're welcome to discuss the issues at hand and be like, this is not proper. We shouldn't be doing this. But you can't attack individuals. It's also just nice practice to use people's titles or their first and last names. I wouldn't be talking to Mark and be like, hey, bro. Try and refer to them as Mr. Speaker or Mark or something a bit more professional. Other big thing is do not interrupt your fellow counselors. If someone is speaking, even if you don't like it, do not interrupt them while they're speaking. Wait until they are done, at which point you can then raise your hand and try and get recognized by the speaker. There are some exceptions to this. So these are called incidental motions. So these are basically procedural motions that people can raise at any point during a meeting. and they're not debatable, and it will stop the meeting where it is until they're resolved. So someone can be in the middle of talking, and you can raise this motion, and people will have to stop. I'll provide people with examples of more, but the big three you all should know about are points of order, points of information, and calling the question. So if someone's talking or you believe that somehow the policies of CUSA or Robert's rules have been violated, you raise your hand and just yell out in the middle of debate, point of order, and the speaker will stop debate and they'll be like, what do you think's wrong? At which point you'll then explain, so-and-so's been talking for 11 minutes, they're out of order. Or you can bring up any kind of issue that believes are violating or not following proper practice, any procedures, Robert's rules, any of our own policies. And that's a way just to make sure that someone's following the rules. So if you feel like something is not going the way it should be, call a point of order and bring it up. Other thing is point of information. This is just about requesting information from the speaker. So if there's been multiple amendments to a motion and you're not really sure what was being discussed right now, point of information. If you're not sure if something is going the way it should be or you want some procedural clarification, you're welcome to just raise your hand in the middle of the debate and go, point of information, speaker, I'm unsure of X, Y, and Z, and they'll provide information to you. Just be reasonable. Don't be making multiple points of information all the time. Make sure people are actually able to have an opportunity to speak. But if you need information at the moment, you can interrupt debate and call that. Finally, you move to call the question. So this is where if a member moves to call the question, debate immediately ends, and we go into a vote where 2/3 approval is required. If you get 2/3 approval is required, debate immediately ends and you go to a vote. This is usually used if debate you feel like is going in a non-productive way, it's starting to spiral and people are not really talking about things as important and you just want to move on. You can interrupt and say, you know what, I call the question. 2/3 of council approve, the speaker will shut down debate and immediately move into a vote. Next, you have the agenda, how to order things. So this section is pretty short. Basically, I have to send out the agenda at 6 p.m. the Friday before the council meeting. Council meetings are always going to be held on usually the last Monday of the month. The legislative calendar was set in AMM Part 2 or Part 3. I'll include that information in stuff I'll put on the website, and I'll let everyone know. But you can submit a motion, 5:59. If it's sent to me, I'll make sure it's included. Obviously, that's not great practice. It's nice if I have some notice that a motion is coming. But if it's any time before that 6 p.m. cutoff, before I have to send the agenda out, you can send it to either myself or the Speaker of Council. I did send the agenda out at 6:10, so I do apologize for being 10 minutes late this week. But any items that are later than that 6 p.m. cutoff, I will not include in the original agenda that I should send out, because any changes with that can't be recorded. So if you send me a motion at 6:05, it will not be included on the agenda. But that doesn't mean you can't talk about it. When we were at the agenda, when we were earlier in our order, and we were talking about approving the agenda, that's a time when you would go, I actually moved to add this motion I've created to the agenda, which you are able to do so. However, making any kind of amendments to the agenda requires unanimous consent. So every councillor must agree to add this to the agenda if it's not been added by that 6 p.m. cutoff. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you forget or you're a little late, or you want some more time to work on something, you're welcome to always introduce it at council on the floor. You just need to make sure you get unanimous consent before it can be added. So just to kind of give you guys a run through of the order of business, we'll always begin with the call to order. That is basically just the speaker announcing that the meeting has begun, and it will usually begin with a land acknowledgement. Then we'll begin with some procedural motions. There's the approval of the agenda. So this is where if anyone would like to make any changes to the agenda, they would do so. If not, it's approved and set. Then we have the approval of the past minutes. So after a council meeting has been done, the clerk will go through and make any final edits to the meeting minutes, and they'll send them out to everybody, and they'll be out for review. This is a point where if you think, oh, I actually moved this motion and I was seconded it, I want that fixed. Or if the clerk is taking notes on what people have said, if you feel like you were misquoted in the minutes, you can ask for it to be amended and fixed at that time. After the approval of the minutes, they won't be edited. So if you have any issues with the minutes of the previous meeting in terms of writing down what has been said, make any changes then, because if not, after they've been approved, they cannot be changed. Then we'll go into reports. The executive will all go through a report, and then some of our external partners, so RAW, CASG, and GSA, and our Board of Governors will often usually give a report. Then there'll be times for council reports. So individual councilors can just kind of give a little report at large if there's any issues that have come up. And then committees will also then give a report. After that, we have our announcements and correspondence, basically just to let things be known to council. If there's a motion being discussed and you feel like there's a conflict of interest where, I don't think I can be objective on this item being discussed, at that point, you would just let everyone know. It's good practice and just being responsible. If you feel like you cannot be objective to a discussion, let people know and recuse yourself because you want to make sure we're having good and productive debate. Next is just items for information. If there's any things that are coming up and you just want to let people know, this is a chance for that. There's a couple today where we're just going to be giving some information out. Specifically for that. Next is notice of motion. Basically, if you want to just let council know that an emotion might be coming, being like, hey, me and a fellow councilor have been working on a motion about sustainability. We might see it at the next council meeting. If you guys are interested in working on it, let me know, but just giving you all a heads up that it might be on the agenda. So that everyone might be aware of it for the next meeting. After all of the reports, there's then a question period where councilors are free to ask questions about anything that's previously been said, whether that's in the reports or announcements. After that, we'll get into regular business, which is where all the motions come from. Unfinished business will deal with anything that was tabled at the last meeting. Tabling is basically just if a motion you feel like isn't going anywhere and you want to save time for the next meeting, you can table it and it'll be picked up where it left off at this point. Everything else follows under new business. So any motions sent to me, any motions brought by the executive, they just all get put under new business and dealt with then. That's when we go through and vote of all the important, not procedural motions. After that's all done, we go to adjournment. And with that, this is kind of your intro to council training, which I knocked that out in like 30 minutes. That's pretty good. I'll kind of just chat really briefly while this is done. People a lot last year were not very happy with the support given to councilors. So obviously I didn't want to make this like a 4-hour thing because I realized that people probably wouldn't pay attention to it. So my plan for today is to kind of give everyone just a brief run through. I'll answer questions after, but then I'm probably going to do kind of little intro sessions at the beginning of our next couple of council meetings for maybe 20, 25 minutes, going a little bit more in depth on maybe motion writing one week, debate the next week, so I can go into a bit more of the details around things going on. Just saving people time today, because there's a lot of other things on the agenda, and I recognize that we don't want to be here for like 7 hours. So just keep that in mind. There might be some additional training coming. And if there's anything you guys ever want to learn more about, let me know, and I will put it on the agenda for some more training. But are there any questions about training now? Not question period, but I feel like this is a good point to address it. Any questions about how debate happens, about how to write a motion, anything? Okay. Awesome. Back to you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, we'll be then moving on to executive reports, and we'll be starting off with President Sarah El-Fatouri.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so I was told these are supposed to be brief, so I'll try to keep it brief for you guys. 1 second. I guess I'll just read it from my phone. Okay, so in the last month, I guess kind of 2 months, the first 3 weeks was mostly training, onboarding, getting to know all of the departments that we have to work with, all the business managers, what the last executive team has done, kind of the state of where we're coming into. Then I completed the transition. All of the executive team and the full-time staff were onboarded. We filled the position of the office manager. So that was Katie from the old bookstore from Haven. We are having weekly meetings for the student union building, kind of getting a better understanding of what steps need to be taken, who we're working with from the university, those types of things. We went to the student care conference, stakeholders in Montreal. Me and Sam went, and we kind of just learned about our healthcare plan, what we provide to students, and different options for the next few years. We're dealing with the wing as well. There's been an issue in terms of what we required to officially launch the wing. It was pre-launched a little bit, but there's some like health department things that we have to work through. So we're just trying to figure that stuff out, see what steps we have to take before it can become operational. But all of the furniture is there. It's a nice place to study. So if anyone is interested in going. We also went to the first CUSA meeting. So I went with the VPSI, so our tour, and also our AVP of Government Relations, Aiden. We were all there just connecting. So CUSA is, I think, the Canadian Association of Student Association. Correct? Something along that. And then we also went to Welcome Ottawa Week reception with the mayor. We got to talk to some ambassadors, ask questions, maybe possibilities of like having like student development in the future with those ambassadors. What else? We met with all the business owners about the current state of their businesses and began brainstorming new ideas for September. So I'm working with Sam on that. Also, I think like most of the executive team has been working on that together. It's kind of like a team project. So we'll talk more about the businesses later on. We also did SEO onboarding. So we met with everyone from SEO, learned what all of their departments do, who to reach out to for different things. We also met with the Ottawa Police Department, the diversity unit, and they talked to us about reporting mechanisms for hate crimes and kind of when we can contact the police. So if we know there's going to be like a demonstration or something like that, that we could reach out ourselves and not wait for the university to do something. And we also did the legal training for the board of directors. So me and the rest of the board have completed that as well. In the month ahead, we're thinking about publishing the executive roadmap. So hopefully before the next council meeting, we'll have something at least out to you guys before we publish it. We're going to think about what we can do for the wing. So if the health department requires us to do renovations that are outside of our budget, we're going to think about what else we can do with that space since we already invested money into the furniture. And in terms of Panda, we're thinking about partnering with the U Ottawa Student Association and doing something like having something leading up to it. So if anyone has any ideas about that, you guys can reach out to me as well. We are planning to meet with the university about divestment. We haven't set anything up yet, but anyone who wants to be involved in that as well, I think we're open to collaboration. I've been working with our tour, trying to give my input for the advocacy roadmap. And me and Sam have also reached out to a bunch of or gotten the contact information for a bunch of businesses so that we can develop a student savings card so that like CUSA students or anybody in the association could have like a card that gives you like discounts to local businesses. So yeah, that's all I have. It's like a quick summary.
All right, thank you, President Alfitori. We'll now be moving on to Vice President Finance, Eastby.
Hello. So Sarah covered a lot of one first off. Yeah, Sarah talked about a lot of what I already mentioned, but I'll just go over some other things and starting with the last 2 months since being put in this position. I completed the transition. I went through this conference as well that was discussed already. Multiple training things and just a basic general admin is what I've been working on, mainly regarding the wing and the student discount card. I'd say those are the two biggest projects. But for the month ahead, I think what we'll be doing is continuing to work on wing related tasks, just trying to, like Sarah said, figure out what an ideal use for that space is given the circumstances of it regarding the use for food and among other things. Further for student discount cards. So in the upcoming months, this could look like just kind of formulating an idea of how we want it to work logistically, what we want it to look like, and if enough progress has gone through, potentially reaching out with community businesses about putting their name on the card and implementing this discount for students this fall. The next part is something I'd like to do just so that for more transparency within CUSA is to come up with a brief budget report similarly designed to a company's annual report, but specifically focusing on the budget that can allow every student to easily access and see what kind of things their organization they're funding, what the money is going towards, and just a more transparent way of showing it. Because I know currently right now on the CUSA website, it's just a mess of spreadsheets, which essentially explains where our money is going. And I think it would be more beneficial to students to see and easier to understand and easier to read and access information that way. So that's a project for the upcoming month. And I believe that's the main parts of it. So I'll hand it off to whoever next.
All right, thank you, Vice President Finance Irsby. We'll now be moving on to Vice President Internal Rocha.
Awesome. Hello again. So obviously, the beginning of May was mostly transition and onboarding for me. Hannah, our student groups administrator, was also on vacation. So for most of May, I was doing a lot of admin tasks with her away. We've updated the clubs training for this year. So if you've done that yet, if you're a club leader, you've probably seen me talking about room booking and stuff like that. We hosted our summer VP Finance and President's meeting. Did that with Hannah, just talking about certification and funding. I've been working a lot with clubs oversight, as this is our busy time with certification and recertification applications. I've been working with our communications and building operations team around the Clubs Hub. The space has been painted, and hopefully we'll be getting some new furniture in there soon with AFCOM. So I'm looking forward to all of this. I've met with the Student Affairs Office to discuss sexual violence and student misconduct in clubs, just trying to make sure that we have a good system that works for club leaders and one that is respected by both CUSA and the university. We're setting up a clubs ad board, which is done by our Clara, our AVP student groups that'll be in or kind of around the wing for clubs to be able to advertise events to students. I attended and presented at the COCA conference in Windsor, which is the Canadian Organization of Campus Activities. So I talked about clubs oversight to the other representatives there. Just got back Saturday, actually. So it was a fun time. Mostly just responded to a lot of club inquiries about certification and funding. I was the succession officer for the DSOC elections after a complaint was submitted. I obviously oversaw the speaker and deputy speaker hiring election process, created a new judicial policy, which you see all today, I'll talk about there, with chair of the board, Alan, and it was supported by some fantastic research by our AVP student groups. SIF applications have opened. I've been assisting students with that. Met with the SEO to begin planning Clubs Expo, and we're just getting the new clubs lockers for club storage sorted out. So I finalized the payments for that, and they should arrive, I believe, end of July, beginning of August. So hopefully club storage will be updated and good to go come September. Month ahead, I'll be supporting Sam and Madam President in the exec roadmap and budget report. I'll be continuing to work on Clubs Hub, hopefully having it ready to go come September. Finishing up the clubs lockers, training speaker, deputy speaker. I want to create a council feedback form, but I have it stuffed with that information, so I'll talk about that later. We have to fill council committees, which I'll talk about later. Got to start working on SIF, set up the appeals committee, should the amendments pass. We got to organize just policies and minutes. They are a bit of a mess. There was a whole issue with some folders being deleted off our website last year. So I just want to make sure we have a better organizing system. It seems like we change it every year. I want to put council training resources on the website. And then in July, I'll be attending the CASA Polystrat conference with VP Student Issues and the president. That's all for me.
All right, thank you, Vice President Internal Rochek. We'll now be moving on to Vice President Student Issues, Estrella da Silva.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Can you all hear me well? Just checking, because the CUSA Wi-Fi sometimes is iffy. So, well, for this past month, of course, we completed the transition, onboarding, trainings process. I had the opportunity to speak at a press conference for MP Leah Gazan, representing CUSA on the subject of GLBI, which is a Guaranteed Livable Basic Income, which is a bill that she has been working on. She invited us to speak there. We started our advocacy update posts with the comms department. The first one was about this speech at the GLBI conference. We'll be posting more throughout the year on updates on things related to advocacy, not only kind of the things that we do, but also things that might be important for students. We attended the CUSA Foundation's conference, as Sarah mentioned, which is the Canadian Alliance of Students Associations. Essentially, CASA is a group that does a lot of federal advocacy, so they're a good liaison and good partners to have, like in greater advocacy goals for students associations. I supported students with individual cases, students that reach out. That's something that is maybe a small part of my portfolio, but one that I enjoy very much. Started the planning for the advocacy roadmap. So within that, we opened general consultation and a council consultation, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. Myself and the AVP's Research and Advocacy, Anna, and AVP Government Affairs, Counselor Aiden Calione, we started working on the advocacy roadmap, listing priorities, and kind of started some work on some of them. We started planning the think tank project, which was one of my platform points, as you guys may recall. We are hoping to launch it by August around Frosh. We'll see how that goes, but it's going very well so far. We planned a divestment advocacy strategy, kind of the whole executive team together. We are hoping to kind of present it to you guys eventually, maybe today, maybe in the future. And we would very much appreciate all of your guys' insight on how we are navigating this. We attended the Welcoming Ottawa Weekend breakfast reception with the mayor, as Sarah mentioned. It was a great opportunity to kind of network with some external partners, and maybe some nice opportunities will come out of that. As Sarah mentioned, we met with the OPS diversity unit to talk about safety on campus, and it was a great connection to make, in case we ever need to rely on them for safety concerns and everything. We have very good contacts now. I started the VPSI office hours. So, if any of you have any student issues or know any friends that could use some help navigating kind of the instruments here at Carleton and beyond, I am happy to help. I've connected with the ISSO on international student life and UHIP, and some new initiatives might be coming on that front. I've connected with the SEO on the UPass renegotiation that just happened. I got some nice updates that will probably be in an advocacy update post once time comes, probably around the start of the fall semester. I attended the first meeting of the Sexual Violence Prevention Committee for where they kind of discussed a few first steps on how this consultation will go throughout the year. We published a statement for National Indigenous History Month. That was work of the AVP Research and Advocacy. We started working on a Housing 101 initiative, which will be essentially kind of a pamphlet PDF with a lot of information that will help students navigate housing in Ottawa once they pursue off-campus housing, which is something that a lot of Carleton students do. And we drafted a housing policy that was work of our AVP Research and Advocacy, which we presented to you guys later today. For the next month, we have a meeting with the university this week to discuss international tuition and international tuition models. We're going to talk about the tuition guarantee, hopefully. We will meet with the university to discuss mental health services. That will come a bit later next month, probably. We will start a international student welcome guide for fall orientation. That's a plan that we are going to hopefully address, myself and my two AVPs for this next month. Hopefully, it will be good to go for fall orientation, as mentioned. I'll attend CUSA Polystrat conference with Aiden and Sarah. As they mentioned, this is a conference where CUSA kind of starts planning how they will advocate broad federal advocacy priorities. So that should be pretty interesting. We will keep on going with the branding for the CUSA think tank, which is something that we're planning on the background, myself and the AVP Research and Advocacy for now. We'll hopefully meet with UOSU, the U-Ottawa Students Union, and Algonquin SA and La Cité AE to continue planning the Ottawa Student Alliance, which is an initiative that we hope to deliver this year. And of course, you guys will be very much consulted and informed in the process. We'll hopefully meet with CASHI sometime soon to discuss academic advocacy, hopefully this Friday. And we'll start drafting the content for the advocacy roadmap itself and the advocacy session on our executive roadmap, and pick new initiatives to start working on.
All right, thank you, Vice President Student Issues Estrella da Silva. We'll now be moving on into Vice President Student Life Imtiaz.
Thank you for the floor, Mr. Speaker, and hello, everyone. So we started with a great transition and onboarding process where we got to know the full-time staff better and where we got to know each other better as well and kind of got a better idea of our portfolio. We also completed the university onboarding training and started the planning around Frosh as soon as I started the role after onboarding. And we started reaching out to artists, vendors for Frosh, and for the entire academic year as well. So we have been working on a few ideas, and we've started working on reaching out to vendors and trying to get to know like different vendors so that we can get the best price for Frosh. And we also have been working on the Frosh budget. And I also attended the Fall Orientation Advisory Council meetings, which were initiated by the Student Experience Office. In these meetings, they basically just ask us and other campus partners about what our plans are for the Frosh and what they want, what we want to see from them from a student's perspective, and also met with the SEO to kind of come up with the Frosh week schedule. I've been collaborating with the communications department on Chonk Nation merchandise and CUSA merch in general for Frosh and for the entire academic year. We've also been developing a sponsorship package with communications and the sponsorship manager. We're trying to get as much sponsorships as possible so we can make events affordable and yeah, so we can get more fundings for our events for the entire year. We also successfully onboarded the AVP student experience at CUSA, and we've been working on a volunteer promotional plan. So we're mostly basing it off from social media, like coming up with more content creating strategies and ideas. And we've also been working on the Chonk Nation volunteer handbook, just making a few edits. I also attended COCA alongside VPI and our events coordinator. We got a lot of ideas from there on how to increase student engagement, and also got to network with a lot of other student unions across Canada. And I'm sorry. Yeah. So moving ahead, we're still going to be reaching out to vendors for our big Frosh event, just trying to get affordable vendors for this. We're also going to start planning our campaign events and strategies. I'm also going to be drafting a proposal for an accessibility liaison officer. I don't know if you guys remember, it was one of my platform points, and it would be a new student position within CUSA. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Vice President Student Life Intiaz. We'll now be moving on to external reports. Do we have any external reports for RAW? Rideau River Residents Association?
Yes. Thank you, Mark. First of all, we successfully transitioned into our role, and we are currently preparing the budget and finances. We are waiting for a couple of things from the accountants. Moving forward, we did a tour for a place for the raw formal, and we are working for sponsorships for more affordable raw formal, and moving on to abstentions, our business. It opened on June 1st, and we are done hiring the manager and cashiers. And we are implementing new strategies and changes to improve the sales, supplies, and security overall. Speaking about security, we also met campus security to expand the bike sharing program. We are planning to bring on new bikes and improve the bike sharing program much more. With that being said, we are also planning for Move-In Week and exciting events. We are currently in conversation with the sponsors, and we have a lot of new things planned from previous years. And we are also improving the club initiative fund. That's it from my side.
All right, thank you, Mohammed Akif. We'll now be moving on to the Carleton Academic Student Government. Is anybody here from CASG? All right, seeing as there's nobody, is there anybody here to speak on behalf of the Graduate Students Association, GSA? All right, seeing as there none, anybody from the Senate? And now, is there anybody here from the Board of Governors?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congrats on your new position. I'm gonna be the incoming student governor at the board. It's gonna be me and Logan. In terms of reporting, I don't really have much to report at the moment because officially our term begins on July 1st. But there are some things that I want to share with you guys from the March 6th board meeting. The board have approved the 2024-2025 budget, and there are going to be some increases in student fees. There will be a 4.6% increase in residence fee, 6.5% increase in meal plan fees, 3.7% increase in athletics fee, 10% increase in parking lot rates, and a minimum of 3.7% increase in the new health and counseling fee. But yeah, there's nothing to report at the moment, and yeah, that's about it for me.
I am also aware that we have a report from another member of the Board of Governors, VP Internal Wojcik. Do you want to comment?
So Governor Breen could not attend tonight, but he made sure to send just a little thing to read out to you all. So I'll do that. Hello, CUSA Council. My name is Logan Breen. I am one of the 2 elected undergraduate governors serving on Carleton's board. Unfortunately, I could not attend live tonight. My purpose as an elected student representative on the Carleton Board of Governors is to be an advocate for students and to ensure that the perspectives of the students are being heard and reflected in the highest levels of the university's decision making. During my term, I want to be a resource for CUSA counselors. I can help you embolden advocacy to university stakeholders. I can raise issues to the Carleton board on your behalf, and I can help you navigate the university's governance structure and governance. I invite you all to contact me through email or social media. Thank you. A copy of this report will be put in the minutes, and I'll also include Logan's email for anyone who would like to reach out to him.
All right, thank you, VP Internal Aiden Wojcik. We'll now be moving on onto council reports. Does anybody have any constituency reports to declare? We'll start off with FPA. We'll now move on to FAS. Anybody from business? From science? And lastly, from Fed, anybody have any constituency reports to declare? Okay, we'll now be moving on to committee reports. All right, we'll now be moving on to announcements and correspondence. First of all, with the declarations of conflicts of interest. If anybody has a conflict of interest to declare, please do so now. Okay, we'll now be moving on for items for information. For the counselor consultation for the advocacy roadmap, I believe VP Student Issues Arturo Estrella de Silva will take it over.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. So I believe you guys have received Aiden's email last week. As I mentioned, we have open consultation for the advocacy roadmap. Last year, we had, only one general form of consultation. And this year, we hope to implement a strategy with 2 separate forms. We do have a general consultation form still that we would appreciate very much if you guys could encourage your friends that are not in CUSA Council to fill it out so we can gather some student insight for our advocacy roadmap. We of course have priorities that we are pretty clear that we intend to work on, but it's always very much appreciated to have that student insight, and always there are things that might not catch our attention at first that students report to us and are very much pertinent. And the second one is a council consultation and feedback form that we incorporated this year. In this form, you guys will have an opportunity to give your general feedback, just like students at large, but also, give your feedback for the advocacy roadmap, the consultation itself, just like students at large. with some nuance to it that pertains only to council. And you guys will also have an opportunity to give some feedback on CUSA advocacy in general, where you guys can talk about efforts from the past that might have caught your attention, things that you believe are sort of in a good direction for us to follow, and also some general feedback questions about the quality of our work. So yeah, Aiden has sent out an email, I believe a week, 2 weeks ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, Aiden. With a link to the form. I'll try and get a link to it right now also and post it here on the chat. Thank you so much, Aiden. You read my mind. So yeah, please fill it out, guys. We would appreciate very much if all of you could fill it out. We always appreciate extra insight and yeah. And feel free to email me also if you have any questions or if you'd like to book a meeting to talk about specific issues and specific priorities that you guys think we should bear in mind for this year. And yeah, we're very much looking forward for your feedback.
All right, thank you, VP Student Issues. We'll now be moving to the Council Social Media Strategy. Aiden Rochek, you have the floor.
Yeah. The next three are just mine, so you want me to just knock them all out together? I'll take that as silence as a yes. So this is something I've been thinking about and I've talked to our comms team a lot about. I want to start up like an actual CUSA Council Instagram. I know there's been a lot of like independent faculty ones. If counselors want to keep those going, that's up to your own purview. I know the comms department doesn't like them because they're not on brand, but ultimately, if they're run by you guys, if you want to keep them, keep using them to promote stuff, you're more than welcome to. But I want to start one that will be run by myself and then speaker and deputy speaker. And then it won't be administered directly by the comms team like the other CUSA Instagrams. It'll be kind of ours and they'll support us on it, just so we can do some more council engagement. It'll be a much easier way for us to publish minutes. Our comms team usually only work standard 9 to 5 hours because they're full time. So this would give us a bit more flexibility in making sure that we can get minutes out at a good time, that we can make sure things are being put out when they need to be. It also would be a good way for us to post more information about council meetings. I want to do a thing where after every council meeting, we get a different counselor to film like a short reel, just discussing what was done at the meeting. And to change each week, so we have a different faculty person each week or each council meeting presenting and give a quick rundown on the meeting. So stuff like that, where I just want to get council Instagram running for that. Just kind of letting everyone know that. If you have any questions or any question period, please let me know. But it's one of the ways that I really want to help engage council this year, is give it more of a pedestal to kind of engage with the public. And I think our own social media account would be a great way to do that, especially to make sure that we're always giving information out. Filling council committees. So there are multiple committees of council that are basically the smaller groups where we can get together and study issues. Sorry, my fan's making a weird noise. And the point of these committees are to kind of have more discussions with the exec and to have more discussions around different paths that we'd like to take. In consultation with the speaker, I'll be sending out a form probably in the next week or two, basically explaining what all the committees are and getting everyone to rank their preference on which one they'd be a part of. Everyone has to be a part of at least one. You can even indicate that you'd want to be a part of multiple, and then we will go in and kind of sort it based on preference. It'll ultimately be voted on at the next council meeting, so we won't have any meetings until the beginning of August. But yes, one thing I'll note is that if no committees have anyone interested in them, people will just be lottery drawn into them anyway. So please do put in which ones you're interested in, and then committees will start operating beginning of August. However, there's a couple items on the agenda where we have to fill subcommittees, which are committees under committees. So I'll talk a bit more about that when that comes up. Just wanted to give you all a heads up that email will be coming, and please fill it out, because if you don't put your preferences down for what committees you'll be a part of, you will just be filtered. You'll kind of be filtered into one of them. But there will be information on like what they are and like their mandate and all that stuff, so you have a general idea of what you want to be involved in. Next is the council feedback form. So I kind of just want to set it a form for all of you to get some feedback on what you want to see for council this year. This goes for counselors that are returning and those that were newly elected. I want to hear about what you're involved in, what you want to be involved in, what kind of motions you want to bring forward. Are you happy with council training? Do you want more training? If so, on what? I'll make sure that it is anonymous, so you guys can put in as much information as you want without any fear of anything. But this is really, really important. Please do fill it out, because I really, really want to make sure council's a good time this year. I was a counselor last year, and I want to make sure everyone walks away having a really great experience and feeling like they can actually do something. So if you have any concerns, any questions, any ideas, put it in and I will make sure that I get it done. I am ultimately a resource for all of you. I want to make sure that you have a great time. I'll also just add here, if you guys ever want to make a motion or need help trying to get something done, please come to me and I will happily sit down with you and draft a motion and work through the process of that. I'll be very, very happy to do that. If you ever want to get anything done, have any concerns, please let me know. I'd be happy to schedule a meeting and chat with you guys.
All right, thank you, Vice President Rochek. I believe we'll now be moving to the Carleton for Palestine, and I believe President Alfitori will speak on this.
Yes, so hi guys. For those who don't know, Carleton for Palestine is a coalition of different organizations and clubs that are working together for divestment, so to push the divestment agenda with the university. So what happened was we had passed our divestment motion, and then we were approached by a coalition of a few different people, and they asked us if we wanted to sign on to the initial letter that they released, which was pretty much like the same thing as our divestment motion. And it was just like they wanted to meet with the university, but they didn't want to meet separately as a bunch of organizations. They wanted us to meet together and kind of to work on this together. So it sounded like a good idea. When we agreed to that, we only agreed to the one letter and to the idea of this coalition. But they ended up continuing without us and posting things and just kind of working as one entity controlling everything instead of coalition of like collaboration. So they're posting things without checking with us. They weren't sending us anything. So they told us that they don't want us as a signatory anymore. So I think we're going to be pushing our own divestment strategy. As Artur said earlier, that we've created a divestment strategy plan. So hopefully we can present that to you guys too and see what you're thinking. And if anyone has any questions. Yes, Jaden. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to call on him.
We're just going to wait for a question period for the questions.
Okay.
All right, now moving on, we have the notice of motion. Does anybody have any notice of motion to provide? And now we'll be moving on to question periods. So if anybody has any questions regarding reports or any of the essentially the month overviews of all the vice presidents and the president, feel free to raise your hand now. And we'll start off with Councillor Devil.
So is my I'm just a little bit confused about. So we passed that divestment motion that was obviously aimed towards the administration of the school, but I don't believe it had any component that signed us on to this organization, and I'm just curious why council wasn't consulted before we signed on.
President Alfitori.
Yes. So so as I said, it was never, we didn't agree to really be part of the coalition. We agreed kind of with the first post, and with the idea of working collaboratively with like these other organizations to push for the same thing. What we initially thought it was versus what it became is two separate things, which is why we're no longer associated with it. But it was definitely something that we were going to consult with the council about. And it was not anything like we thought the only step that they were taking was just the initial idea of the coalition. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I guess I'm just confused why we weren't consulted. Like, because in my mind at least, there was no like express permission given to sign on or associate with this organization. And us as counselors were not informed about this association. And I'm just, I guess I'm just curious why, what was the reason we weren't consulted?
So again, so before council, like council wasn't meeting until for like 2 months from the beginning of when we got our positions. So this was like in the first like week or 2 weeks, we were told, like I was approached and told like this is something that the old president was working on, and something that like it was just the idea of everyone who was already passed a divestment motion. So GSA and I think QP 4600. Other organizations at Carleton that have passed similar divestment motions wanted to collaborate. So the divestment motion kind of gives us like the responsibility to go and meet with the university and work on towards divestment. So it's kind of just the idea of working with other organizations to do that same thing. Before any steps were to be taken, we were gonna check with council, but it just didn't unfold the way that we expected it to, or at least I expected it to. So I apologize for that.
Okay, thank you for this. Since this is not a debate right now, we're just going to keep it with one question, one answer. And since Councillor Hussein was next into raising her hand, I understand Dana, Councillor Dana, you said 2, but since we're not doing debates right now, we're going to go to the next up in the line of order, which is Councillor Hussein. So you have the floor.
So I also just wanted to ask a question. You're saying we a lot, and I just wanted to know if it was a decision like made by the execs, or if it was your decision to join the council or join the organization without consulting council, because I'm just a little unclear as to whose ultimate say it was and what went on behind the scenes.
Well, again, we never officially joined the coalition. That's not what we agreed to. What we agreed to, and when I say we, I was informing my team on everything that was going on, because what I was told at the beginning was this is something that the past president was already working on. So whenever I was dealing with this, I didn't know who to consult. This was kind of at the very beginning of my term. So we agreed to the first post on the way to the CUSA strategy conference. I was with the VPI and I showed him just that one initial letter. And I said, does this look similar to kind of what we did in council? Do you think this is something that we could approve? We both thought it was like similar enough from my understanding. And then we agreed to sign on to that initial letter, but not to like the beginning of anything or doing anything. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it wasn't like what ended up happening was not what we agreed to or not what I agreed to. But in the beginning, the lack of confusion, I take accountability for it.
Okay, well now I'll now be giving the floor to, we have a point of order from Councillor Syed Ahmed.
Yeah, I just have a point of order in the fact that we are allowed to have twos on the same topic if we're discussing the same point. And I would just like to continue this conversation of I'm just really confused because there was apparently we were under the impression that the divestment policy that we passed in AGM Part 3, it specifically details the divestment from, and it details exactly what we expect. The policy in itself, I read that policy so many fucking times, like, sorry guys. Nowhere does it say anything about collaborating with external organizations, and it does not give explicit permission for anything else. Council is held accountable for everything that we sign on to, that CUSA's name goes on to. And CUSA was signed on to that coalition officially on Instagram. I watched the launch. And then they posted pictures of vandalism a few days later. I have no intention of getting sued. And I just, will the new divestment policies be shared with us before they're made public? And can we guarantee that that will be, something we wait for the next council meeting rather than just going ahead anyway? Because I do feel like we are legally liable for this, and therefore we should be included in these conversations.
Yeah, 100% I agree with you. So as I said at the beginning, it was unclear and it's not something that I understood completely. I was driving in the car, we were getting these messages. It was like something I didn't understand the proper procedure, the proper steps to go through was never explained to me. Also background wise, I'm a science student, guys, so I'm learning as I go. So in terms of that, it was my mistake at the beginning. And we actually, I explicitly asked for those posts not to be made. And again, our consult or like our opinion was not taken at all from the beginning. So they just asked us if we agreed with the first post, we agreed. And then since then, there was no like further consultation or further communication. So yeah, I think there's also something in the chat that said, what was it that made you disagree with the actions of the coalition? So again, I only agreed to the idea of working with these other groups. I didn't agree to anything that they posted aside from the first post. So when they kept posting things with our name, it made us liable. So that's kind of what we disagreed with. And when we shared those disagreements with the coalition, they told us they think it would be better if we just worked separately, which I think all of us agree with. So
Before we keep going, I have a point of order from Councillor DeVoe.
So just from your responses, is it my understanding that you acted alone in, agreeing to associate CUSA with this coalition? And if it wasn't done with the consultation of at least the other VPs, um, should you just have not have acted at all? I don't see why being new to the position is an excuse. If you haven't received the proper training, if you aren't familiarized, I don't think you should be making those broad decisions without consulting with council or consulting with the other VPs. I think that fundamentally is just a procedure issue at that point. Like you defer to the people with experience.
yeah, I agree with you. And it was in no sense an excuse, just a little bit of background. But in terms of if it was solely my decision, I was told this is something that they were working on from last year, the past president. And whenever the only paper that I agreed to, that was released from the beginning, I checked with the VPI and the VPSI. We were driving to the conference. Also for the first month, most of our team was not here at the same time. Everyone is at different conference at different times. So we didn't really have like a lot of collaborative sessions. But as soon as I was able to talk to my team about it, I did. And yeah, I felt that the divestment motion was similar enough to what the other letter was, and it was just working with other organizations. And we work with a lot of these organizations anyways. Like we have a lot of other, not coalitions, but just working groups, or like we consult with them on these things. So I just felt like it was like something that would be beneficial to work with them. I didn't understand kind of the steps that you had to take to get there. So that's my fault. And I don't know if there's any more questions on that.
I have a point of information from Councillor Zaida Ahmed. And after that, we'll be going to Councillor Olagunju right after.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I think I must have phrased my last question weird, I guess. I was just wondering if you mentioned that you and Arturo are working on a new divestment policy or like a new divestment strategy. Will it be shared with us? That just like point blank, will it be shared with us for next council meeting and we can go over that at next council? Like, I'm just wondering.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
We learned what not to do, so now hopefully this will not be occurring in the near future.
All right, Councillor Olagunju, you have the floor.
I want to start by saying, I think we also need to obviously, well, this isn't my question. I'm just bouncing off of what has been said, then I'll ask my question. But I just wanted to say that I think we should cut each other some slack sometimes. Yes, some things could happen the way you didn't expect, but I think we can all just take a lesson from what we just kind of discussed in the last 5-ish minutes. But I think ultimately, like Sarah said, all that matters is that we do not have such a thing repeat itself and leave everybody in a state of confusion, because it's something we don't want to have. Anyways, to my question, I don't know if this is something that is going to be worked on in the next few weeks, but I was wondering, in terms of Pride, is there a campaign that we were possibly looking to involve ourselves in, or is that something we don't do right now because we're in Ottawa and it's August? I was just more so curious on that, because we were talking about other issues that were kind of in the same boat, if that makes sense. But yeah, I guess that's kind of a question for everybody, but specifically I thought about it when VPSI Arturo was talking about his month in review and what's to come. But yeah, that's my question.
All right, VP Estrella de Silvia.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you so much for the question. What I can say is that at this moment, we have received the university's notice of interest in having some degree of support from us in terms of Capital Pride. We will look forward to help in certain capacities. I will say that if we are to disclose a bit more information about how we'll proceed with Capital Pride, I'd be glad to do so, but I would ask to motion to move in camera if possible to discuss this information due to some, well, to put it simply, some legal concerns. I am glad to also answer any counselors that are passionate about this this question, particularly in a more private way. But yeah, we will be supporting in certain capacities with Capital Pride wherever we are allowed to. I can say, but yeah, I would encourage very much that counselors that are passionate about Capital Pride and about the roles we have played in the past to reach out. I am glad to offer some more thorough insight on how things will go for Capital Pride.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Councillor Said Ahmed.
Yeah. So sorry, it's again, I have a separate question, and I'm also building off of what the previous counselor mentioned. But yeah, queers, queer engineers, CUE, we march every year at Capital Pride. It's just a bunch of like all of the members they go in March and participate during Capital Pride, and I know Capital Pride has openings. Just a suggestion, throwing it out there, if CUSA would want to look into marching for Capital Pride and just having a designated space, because I know a lot of faculty members and a lot of separate student organizations go anyway, so it would be a kind of good idea to just have it all under one big umbrella. Second question, or like at least the first question, whatever, is also directed to you, Artur. But this is something that I know Councillor Jaden and I've also mentioned it to Councillor Dano, Speaker Dano, had mentioned, is we've been having an issue with the Fed, because we are Fed counselors, with the Faculty of Engineering. And it has been the exclusion of engineers at heart from participating in ENSFROSH. We received a notice from the SEO earlier this week that non-engineers or non-Fed students would no longer be allowed to volunteer to participate as part of our FROSH, part of ENSFROSH, and engineers at heart represent a large percentage of our community, and they've built a lot on the engineering community and what it is today. And we have a lot of friends who are non-engineering departments simply because people switch out, or roommates or friends or whatever. And the SEO's decision comes as a shock to all of us, because these volunteers are literally giving them all of their time and energy and expecting nothing in return. They've been doing so for years, and excluding them for no other reason than their major is stupid. And also having them be on the forefront of what we get to experience. By we, I mean FROSH, first year engineers experience this FROSH, that non-engineering students have more to offer and can benefit our community, rather than just having the engineering supremacy complex continue. And having that be a thing is very important to us. It's very important to myself, and I've spoken to the two other counselors that I've mentioned, and we all feel the same way. And I was wondering if it was possible for us to apply any sort of push to the SEO to further reiterate that, like, they're literally doing this for no reason. And I just wanted to hear what you thought about it, and would you support us in this, and could we talk to the SEO about this?
May I, Mr. Speaker? Thank you so much. So yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor Dana. We have connected before, myself and yourself about this issue. It seems to be something that pertains directly to your community, and that is, certainly an impediment to your infrash and to all that you guys value in your event for a few years. From what you described to me, we have discussed a bit of strategy, which I think it's worth sharing here with council at large. From what I gather, you guys have started a petition, correct, to kind of express your discontent with the situation. I am more than glad to support in any capacity within the portfolio of student issues in this connection with the SEO. I would also encourage not only yourself but all the other engineering counselors, if you fellas are interested in meeting here in my office to kind of discuss what can be some of the next plans. I know VPI Aiden, he probably has some interesting insight as well from the club's perspective and how to navigate the situation. I think it's something that I'd be eager to help you guys with, because it seems to be close to heart to your faculty. So yeah, whatever I can do to help in terms of strategy and in terms of push and conversation, I'm glad to do so.
Thank you all for the questions and answers. We'll now be moving on to regular business and to new business in particular, seeing that there's none in unfinished business. The first up, we're going to do the motion to appoint AVP.
Point of order.
Yes.
Did I'm sorry, was the question about Pride answered by VPSI or really anyone? Do we have plans about Pride?
From my understanding, yes, it has been answered by VP Student Issues. Estrella, if you want to do a quick recap, a 10-second recap, and we can move on to new business, that'd be great.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, you would like me to?
If you could please provide just a 10-second recap in order for the next steps, and we'll then be moving on to new business.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially the overview that I can offer you guys, I could go a little bit more in detail, but then I would recommend that we motion to go in camera. We do have a few legal concerns regarding our situation with Capital Pride. We are happy to contribute to it in a capacity that is somewhat different from what we've done from years past. What I can say it is because at the moment our GSRC is closed for the summer. I could disclose the information in a bit more detail if you guys reach out to me individually. It might be easier. All you counselors that are passionate about Capital Pride and everything, we would be happy to clarify perfectly what will be kind of our position. I think in the public meeting, unfortunately, we can't disclose the situation in full. But I'd be glad to meet with every single one of you that's passionate about Capital Pride and would like a little bit more of insight of what will be CUSA's position within Capital Pride.
Thank you, VP.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I hope it answers the question. I know for the public meeting, it's perhaps not the most direct answer, and I do acknowledge that, but I'm glad to answer it much more directly if approached individually or in camera. Possible.
Thank you, VP Student Issues, Estrella da Silva. We'll now be moving on to the motion to appoint AVP Executive Relations as Clerk C-05, whereas Council requires a clerk to take minutes and assist in record keeping, and whereas the AVP Executive Relations already serves as a clerk of the CUSA Board of Directors, and whereas extending the duties of the AVP Executive Relations to clerking council could streamline the organization of minutes. Be resolved that the AVP Executive Relations serves as Clerk of Council for the duration of the legislative year. Can I have a mover? Councillor De Oliveira, and can I have a seconder? Councillor Hussein. We'll now be voting. Does anybody want to speak on this motion? Councillor, VP Internal Racek?
Yeah, I guess this was kind of a discussion between me and the president around who do we want to take minutes during these meetings. It's not usually me. We usually have a clerk for that. I had one last year. But the question was raised of, why don't we just make the AVP Executive Relations do it? Because they already are also responsible for serving as the clerk of board directors. I'm responsible for like minute and record keeping for both council and the board, not in terms of writing the minutes, but in terms of managing all that, make sure it gets uploaded. So it would make sense to have the same person also do minutes for both sides. It would also free up some of the budget in terms of hiring a clerk, as we would end up just using the AVP executive relations working hours that's already been budgeted for. But I'm rather indifferent as the path we take. I just wanted to pose this to council and see what you all thought. We can always hire a clerk for the next meeting. It's in the budget. We can go and put a posting for that. We could also then make the AVP executive relations do it. Just wanted to pose it to everyone here, put a motion here if we decided to do it. I'm open to what people have to say.
Does anybody want to speak on this motion on VP Internal's Rochek's point? Seeing as there are no more debates, we'll now be moving on to a vote. By a show of hand, councillors for this motion, please raise your hand.
Point of information, speaker.
Go for it.
Who seconded it again?
Seconded by, I believe, Councillor Hussein. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Awesome.
Okay, and by show of hands, those against, so please lower your hands. And President Sarah, can you just confirm that is a show of hand against the motion? Okay, thank you. This motion can now be called carried. Carried unanimously. We will be now moving on to the motion to amend G-03, the judicial policy, also known as C-06, whereas there is a need for a committee to hear appeals from lower bodies, example, the Club Oversight Commission, the Chief Returning Officer within CUSA. And whereas CUSA currently has an appeals body known as the Students' Tribunal, and whereas in his transition report, the previous VP Internal noted that the Students' Tribunal is ineffective and unable to properly function. And whereas an overhaul is required to have a functioning appeal system within CUSA, be resolved that the following amendments to G-03 judicial policy are adopted. Do I have a mover? Councillor Said Ahmed, and do I have a seconder? I'll take Councillor Kalainoan. Does anybody wish to speak on this motion? VP Internal Rochek.
Hi, everyone. This is something I would normally like to put through council for some more discussion. Problem is, obviously, committees aren't meeting right now, and there is a bunch of appeals backed up that need to kind of be dealt with some expediency. So I kind of had to go ahead and make amendments. Basically, the Students' Tribunal was a complete mess. It was set up in a way where we had to have like current law school students, like JD program law school students on it. We don't have a law school. I mean, there is one at U Ottawa, but it was like very difficult to find people. It was set up in a way that it was a glorified Supreme Court where quite literally you were allowed to bring anyone to the tribunal for behavior unbecoming CUSA. That wasn't defined. So it was an absolute mess where it was unable to meet. There was club appeals that needed to be dealt with, and it was just a complete and utter, this is kind of unparliamentary, but it was a complete shit show, to put it the best way possible. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. I apologize. I retract that, but it needed to be said. So basically, I sat down with the chair of the board, the vice chair of the board, sorry, and we just gutted half of it because it was set up in a way where it was overly legalistic, where any normal student would never be able to navigate this. So the new system is basically, it's going to be a joint committee between the board and council. It'll have 2 board directors and 2 counselors that will sit on it, and then it will have a chair. We took some information from the Western USC, their student union, and the chair will be an external lawyer from our legal counsel, and they will be the ones responsible for kind of chairing the meeting and bringing that legal aspect to it, because there is a lot of that in the policy in terms of understanding the practices of like evidence gathering and proper procedure and all that. So the idea would be a 5-person tribunal to make sure it would be easy for it to meet. The chair would obviously be an external lawyer, and there'd be 4 other members. There'd be requirements that they could not be a current CUSA club executive, a CUSA staff member, or an executive on another levy carrying group, such as RAW or CASG, purely because we wanted to minimize potential conflicts of interest. Because often this tribunal is set up to operate off of precedent. So if you're a club leader and you're trying to make a precedent on clubs, you obviously have interest to make sure it favors whatever you want your outcome to be. So we just wanted to make sure it was set up in a way where we would be able to limit potential conflict and have people either have to recuse themselves all the time and just make it work properly. So now you can no longer bring people here for unbecoming behavior. It's purely just set up to deal with appeals, like election appeals will be dealt here, clubs oversight appeals will be dealt here, just as a way for us to easily deal with all this. We also rename it to the appeals committee because we are not the Supreme Court. We don't need a judicial policy. It makes a lot more sense this way. I'm happy to answer questions about it. Once I said before, normally this would be a thing I would have loved to put through committee for discussion. We just have like 5 or 6 appeals that need to be dealt with rather urgently. So I wanted to make sure we were able to just get a head start on this. Yeah.
Thank you, VP Internal Wojciech, for retracting the word as well. Do we have anybody wishing to speak on VP Internal Wojciech's comments, but also in the amendments itself as well? Councillor Bruni. Councillor Bruni, you have the floor, but you may be
sorry,
muted.
my mic was muted. So my issue with 15.1 is in terms of like what extent should we, like, how do you define an executive within a CUSA certified club, for example? Because there's also, I believe, director level positions within certain clubs, and I don't know if that's particularly well defined, but more so like I'm very conflicted about not including executives of CUSA certified clubs, and what about non-CUSA certified clubs as well? It just seems a little unfair to disqualify people who may want to hold this position on either the CUSA board or CUSA council, when I'm pretty sure most of us are probably sitting as an executive on some sort of CUSA club or club in society. So I just wanted to get that out there.
VP Internal Wojciech.
Yeah. So in terms of defining CUSA executive on CUSA certified club, club's oversight outlines pretty clearly that if you're a member outlined, it would be a member who's outlined in the executive list submitted during recertification. So it usually wouldn't apply to director level positions or any kind of executive positions that would be hired. Like I know my biggest example is like CPSS has like first year reps who obviously wouldn't, who are like those lesser level positions within clubs. If you'd like to expand that to cover them too, you're welcome to. Or I know you're in your case, you're not maybe on the fence about CUSA certified clubs. Just kind of reiterate my last point. I'm just thinking from this perspective from clubs oversight, where very often when clubs issues, because club executives are a part of things, they have to recuse themselves all the time. And I'm just worried about a body like this, and you want to make sure that people are making these decisions are impartial, specifically because that's why we want to have a lawyer as chair. If the committee wants, I'm open to removing that. Also, non-CUSA certified clubs aren't a thing. There are clubs that can be certified through the SEO, but they have no interaction with us at all. So a non-certified CUSA club wouldn't have any, or executive from that club wouldn't have any conflict because any decision they make wouldn't impact that. But I'm happy to change it if that's something council wants. My perspective was I wanted to make sure this is as impartial as possible. Clubs oversight is already a body stocked full of people with clubs experience. So we already have a body overseeing club appeals that are from the club's world. If we wanted to then have a similar group, because that's what this will become, a group of people who have previous clubs experience on this body as well. It doesn't forgo people that are no longer, but were previously a CUSA club executive. But, you know, we already have clubs oversight as a body of clubs-minded people to make clubs decisions. If someone's appealing clubs oversight, I think they would want to have a more impartial body where the clubs, where they feel like the body designed for clubs by clubs hasn't already hit the threshold. But I'm open to amending things. Like, how did I answer your question? I rambled a little bit.
Councillor Bruni, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other comments to add to the motion? Seeing as there is now, we'll now be going into a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those in favor, please lower your hands. All those against this motion, please raise your hands. And just double checking with Councillor Emma. Is this a hand for against or for?
Against.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now be this motion is carried. We'll now be going on to the next motion to adopt the housing policy C-07. Whereas council has a responsibility to adopt political and issue stances, and whereas issue stances are essential in providing direction to the VP students' issues advocacy efforts, and whereas the availability and affordability of housing are some of the primary concerns of many students, and whereas CUSA therefore should advocate on this issue, be it resolved that council adopt the housing policy. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kalinoan. Do I have a seconder? We'll say Councillor Bizunet. Does anybody wish to speak on this motion? Councillor Kalinoan.
Yeah, I thought I might speak just for a minute or two and maybe address some of the contents of the policy. I know I had assisted our Vice President Student Issues, Artur, and our AVP Research in informing this policy. I'm really happy it's coming forward to council today. I want to give the government side perspective, also keep in mind people's time because I got my eyes on the pregame right now, so I won't take too long. But yeah, so the short and sweet of it is a lot of the government advocacy work we do here at CUSA kind of tends to fall under the radar, and we're doing a lot more to make sure that that's out there in the public so people know what sorts of meetings we're having, what sorts of priorities we're advocating on, and things like that. But basically, the policy principles that are outlined in this document come from our work over the last year and into the next year, too, in terms of what we want to advocate to the city, to the provincial government, and to the federal government, as well as our on-campus advocacy. So the main highlights concerning the city are rent eviction legislation and holding landlords accountable. That was a big one for me personally and for our team, in that we've had meetings and have sponsored anti-rent eviction legislation to the city of Ottawa, basically keeping landlords accountable at the time of renovation and keeping rents affordable is the short and sweet of that. On the provincial side, on-campus housing, particularly low-cost loans, caps on student prices. These are things we're looking at on the provincial side. As well, the province likes to talk a lot about the shortage of missing middle housing. So your triplexes, your quadplexes, your townhouses, and what we're doing to increase this overall supply of these sorts of housing types in the province. And then on the federal side, one of the big things we were pushing over this year is incentives for students to purchase their own homes, particularly through FHSAs. So for those who don't know, a first home savings account is something you can set up right now that basically allows you to contribute a certain amount tax-free towards a first home. And one of the major initiatives we have advocated for over the last year was a one-for-one matching contribution scheme that the federal government, if you paid down a portion of your federal loan, they would pay a certain amount into your FHSA. So what that would do is it would incentivize students to both pay down their loan and to save for a first home. So it's things like that I feel like over the next year we'll do a really good job of getting better at communicating with students. But it's some of the things I've been working for on my end of things as government relations. And I mean, any questions, I would direct them to myself, Artur, our AVP Research. We're all happy to answer them, but I think it's a wonderful policy, and that's why I moved it today. And I'm happy to have contributed to some of the stuff inside of it. So yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Do we have any questions on the motion? Seeing as there are no questions and no further points, we will now be moving on to a vote. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. All those in favor, please lower your hand. All those against this motion, please raise your hand. Seeing as there, fantastic, great. This motion is now carried. And we'll be now moving on to a motion to appoint a counselor to the club's Oversight Commission, C-08. Whereas CUSA Council has a representative that serves on the club's Oversight Commission, and whereas council must decide on a representative on the commission, be it resolved that candidate be appointed as a council representative on the club's Oversight Commission. Can I have a mover? Councillor Hussein, and secondary, I'll take Councillor Said Ahmed. I will let Vice President Internal Rodchek to speak on this motion and also on the possible amendment.
Yeah, so to give everyone a quick rundown, Clubs Oversight Commission is kind of our independent body that's responsible for overseeing everything related to clubs. All clubs complaints, we also oversee certification, recertification of clubs funding. Any decision made by clubs is made through the commission. So the commission is comprised of myself, our student groups administrator, who's Hannah, VP Finance, and then we have 3 club reps that are elected by clubs at our fall president's meeting. We also have a counselor that sits on the club's oversight commission. I did that last year. It's a lot of fun. You basically you're one of the people involved in making clubs decisions. It is a fairly large commitment. Well, large. We meet every week for about an hour during periods of during recertification, for example. Right now, I think we have 2 4-hour meetings scheduled, one tomorrow and one Wednesday. So it does go through periods of intense work where there's like funding applications come around. You have to get them all done. But for the most part, you can expect about an hour a week. During heightened periods, we sometimes meet anywhere from 2 to 3 times a week for multiple hours, but that only happens 2 or 3 times a year. It's an awesome opportunity if you want to be involved with clubs. Yeah, so I think the way we'll do it is we'll see who's interested, and then actually we'll vote them by way of amendments. So yeah, people are interested, they can motion to add them to be interested, and we'll do a motion, and that will kind of be our confidence vote if people are in favor. Or we could end up doing an election if people want. Granted, I'm not sure how many people are actually going to be interested, but it's a really fun opportunity. I recommend it. Just make sure you have time for it.
Councillor Kalinoan.
I mean, I motion that I'm interested in it, and people who know me know I'm a busy guy, so I wouldn't commit to something if I knew I couldn't make the time. But I had a wonderful opportunity to work with Hannah on a few things last year, particularly council training on advocacy issues and stuff, and that was a real treat. And for me, I like to treat everything as a learning experience and an opportunity for me to learn a bit more about this organization. So I would very much like to sit on the oversight commission and maybe learn a bit more about our club structure. I mean, I'm a member of a few clubs here on campus, but to learn how those sorts of applications are processed, I'm open to it and would love to have council's consideration.
So the motion to appoint Councillor Kalinoan to the
Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's see if there's anyone else interested as well.
Councillor Said Ahmed.
Hi, I'm also interested in joining this position. I also have a lot of experience on clubs. I'm going into my 5th year of aerospace engineering. I'm almost done, hopefully. I have had a lot of club experience over the last 5 years. I've been heavily involved in the engineering WELL community. And I am currently not, I've taken this year as taking a step back and not being involved in any clubs or societies just so that I can, have a little bit more time. And I feel like this is a good thing. It's a good way to give back, um, to still serve clubs without being directly involved in any club. And yeah, I would love this opportunity to, um, you know, just help out and lend some experience where it's needed.
Thank you, Councillor Said Ahmed. And once again, does anybody else is interested for this position? If not, we will move ahead. And I will refer to Vice President Internal Aiden Rochek for best practice in this case. Oh, Councillor Kalinoan first.
I am more than happy to withdraw my name. I just put it out there. If Dana really wants this, that's her goal. You go for it.
Cool. Thanks, Aiden.
Okay, seeing as there are no other councillors interested for this position, I suggest that we'll now move to I suggest we'll now go for discussion regarding the amendment to. Okay, I suggest we
Point
amend.
of order.
Yes, go for it.
So the proper practice here would be someone has to motion to amend the motion to put Dana's name in. We then actually vote on that, then vote on the motion as a whole.
Okay, thank you for this intervention. I will go with Councillor Kalinoan. We're good. Okay, so we'll motion to amend this motion to include Councillor Said Ahmed's name within the motion to appoint a councillor to the club's oversight commission. Do I have a mover and do I have a seconder? Mover Councillor Bruni and seconder Councillor Kalinoan. By a show of hand, by a show of hand, is this amendment approved? If raise your hand if you're in favor. Thank you. Please lower your hand. And please raise your hand if you are against. Okay, thank you. So be it resolved that Councillor Councillor Said Ahmed is written into the motion to appoint a councillor to the club's oversight commission. Does anybody have any further discussion on the actual motion itself? Okay, I will now be going on to a vote. All those for, please raise your hand. Thank you. Please lower your hands, all those for. And now please raise your hands, all those against. This motion is carried. We'll now be moving on to the next motion. Motion to fill the Student Initiative Fund Committee, C-09, whereas the Student Initiative Fund Policy S-01 dictates that 2 CUSA councillors must sit on the Student Initiative Fund Committee. And whereas administrating the committee usually falls to the Finance, Fees, and Funds Committee. And whereas as a council opted not to have a May council meeting, committees will not be filled until the end of July. And whereas the Student Initiative Fund Committee must begin meeting to review summer applications, be resolved that candidate be appointed to serve on the Student Initiative Fund Committee. So we'll proceed in a similar fashion. Are there any councillors interested in joining the Student Initiative Fund Committee? Please raise your hand.
Point of order.
Yes, VP Internal Rochek.
We do need a mover and a seconder first.
Oh, apologies. Okay. Do I have a mover? Do I have a seconder? I'll take Councillor Akif as the mover and Councillor Said Ahmed as the seconder. Now we start. We'll be proceeding in a similar fashion. Does anyone is interested in joining this committee? Please raise your hand. Councillor Kalinoan. Okay, so we have Councillor Kalanoan interested. Do we have a, yes, VP Internal Racek?
Can I just speak quickly to kind of explain this a little?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, so normally, yeah, finance, fees, and funds will be responsible for deciding this. We decided not to have a May council meeting, which kind of, well, threw this whole plan out the window because SIF needs to start meeting to review summer funding applications. So both this and AFCOM are basically normally to be filled by the committee it's administered by. Just because of timelines, we have to get a move on getting these things started. It's a great opportunity, especially if you want to make sure, funding is going to the right areas. It'll probably be similar to clubs oversight, but far less intensive because there's much less applications and SIF only really meets when needed. So maybe a couple hours a month, if that. Please, thank you to Aiden for putting himself forward, but please sign up. We need people to be able to do this. We need people to step forward to be able to run all this stuff, especially with AFCOM too. So I really recommend putting your name forward. These kind of committees, these funding opportunities, they only work because counselors decide to become involved. So I'm asking you all now, especially for all these things coming forward with subcommittees, with this, with AFCOM, please put your names forward because we need you to be able to provide these services to students.
Oh, Councillor Bruni. Just double checking you are putting yourself for the fund committee.
Yes, I would.
Okay, we'll now, is anybody else interested in joining the Student Initiative Fund Committee? And just before, I have a point of order from Councillor DeVaux.
Oh, I was just confused because you allowed Mohammed Akif to move the motion. I was just under the understanding that the raw president wouldn't have voting rights. Wouldn't it be when he just has speaking rights? So wouldn't we need someone else to move the motion? Is that right, Aiden?
So I'll just take it from here. Asked Aiden the same question as well. So he does have a vote with Raw as well. So in this case, he is eligible to move a motion. Does that answer your question? And VP Internal Check if you want to add on.
Yeah, so actually Raw and CASG have voting rights, full voting rights as representatives. The GSA and the Board of Governors do not. So the distinction between the two of them, the GSA and the Board of Governors people only have speaking rights. Raw and CASG have full voting rights.
Cool, thanks, Aiden. Thanks
for the clarification. We'll now move to motion to amend the motion to include Councillor Kalanoan within one of the candidates. Yes, but first we have a point of order from Councillor Said Ahmed. Oh.
Sorry, I'm motioning your motion to.
Okay.
Moving your motion to motion. Sorry.
Great. Okay, so we have Councillor Said Ahmed as a mover. Can I have a seconder for this motion to amend the motion? We have Councillor DeVaux. By a show of hand, all those for amending the motion to, yeah, there you go. Thank you. We're getting the gist of it. Okay. Okay, and please lower your hands. All those against, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing as there are none, the motion to amend the motion to include Councillor Kalanoan is implemented. We'll now be moving on to the same thing, except we'll be motioning to amend the motion to include Councillor Bruni's name within this motion. Do I have any mover and seconder? We have a mover, Councillor Kalanoan, and seconder, Councillor Hussein. Thank you. By a show of hand, all those for the motion, please raise your hand. All those, yeah, all those for, please lower your hands. All those against, please raise your hands. Seeing as there are none, this amendment to the motion is now carried. We'll now be voting on the actual motion itself. Does anyone have any comments to add to this motion? All right, we'll now be passing on to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands. All those for, please lower your hands. All those against, please raise your hands. And I'm just checking Councillor Khan. That is a hand for against or for. Okay, thank you. I'll take that as a for. This motion is now carried and we'll now be moving on to the next motion. Motion to fill the Accessibility Fund Committee C-10, whereas the Accessibility Fund Committee dictates that 2 CUSA councillors must sit on the Student Initiative Fund Committee, and whereas administrating the committee usually falls to the University Affairs Committee, and whereas as council opted not to have a May council meeting, committees will not be filled until the end of July. And whereas the Accessibility Fund Committee must begin reviewing applications due to summer deadlines. Be it resolved that candidate and candidate be appointed to serve on the Accessibility Fund Committee. Do I have a mover? Councillor Bruni, do I have a seconder? Take Councillor Hussein. Does anyone wish to speak on the motion itself and or put themselves up as candidates to be participated to the Accessibility Fund Committee? Okay, we have Councillor Burke and Councillor Hussein. Do we have any other additional potential candidates? Okay, I will now be motioning to amend the motion to include Councillor Burke in the Accessibility Fund Committee. Do I have a mover? I'll take Councillor Kalinoan, and do I have a seconder? Councillor Bruni. Does anybody wish to speak on the motion? We will now be going to a vote. All those in favors in all those in favor of amending the motion to include Councillor Burke's name, please raise your hand. Okay, yeah, all those in favor to, yeah. All those against, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is now passed. And now next up, we'll have Councillor motion to amend the motion to include Councillor Hussein, I believe, to be appointed to serve on the Accessibility Fund Committee. Mover Councillor Kalinoan, and can I have a seconder, which is going to be Councillor Khan. And once again, we'll just be going to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those against, all those in favor, please lower your hands. And now all those against, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing as there are none, fantastic. That motion is passed. We'll now be going voting on the motion to fill the Accessibility Fund Committee as a whole. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. All those in favor, please lower your hands. All those against, please raise your hands. So seeing as there are none, this motion is carried. We will now be moving on to the motion to appoint a councillor to the insurance subcommittee of the board. Whereas the board of directors is responsible for decisions regarding the health and dental plan, and whereas the board has found it difficult to administer the constant decisions regarding the health and dental plan. And whereas a motion will be brought to the board to create a subcommittee to handle decisions regarding the health and dental plan, and whereas council will be given a set on this subcommittee. Be it resolved that should a subcommittee of the board of directors be created to oversee the health and dental plan, council appoints candidate to serve as a representative on said committee. Do I have a mover? Councillor Bizunet, and do I have a seconder? Councillor Bruni. Does anybody wish to be that said candidate? Please raise your hands. Oh, first we have a point of order from VP Internal Rocek.
No, I should explain this so people understand.
Okay, go for it.
This was brought to me by one of our staff members. Basically, as it says, there's going to be a new subcommittee created by the board for looking over day-to-day operations with insurance. There was a lot of issues this year of a lot of insurance decisions constantly falling to the board, and it was a very big admin drain on them. So they're trying to set up a committee to deal with a little bit more of those decisions. So this will be dealing with decisions regarding operations and also like the long-term future of our health and dental plan. It's a pretty big responsibility. I've been told that to request that students that sign up for this have availability during the workday during the summer, particularly because that's when the board will be meeting and when staff will be around. But this is a really, really cool opportunity. This is brand new. The board still has to vote this in. They're meeting in, I think, a week or two. So this is what this actually looks like. We decided there. This motion is basically a trigger so that when it's created, and if there's a council seat, it'll be filled by whoever we decide to put here. But I'll just stress that whoever does this should be someone that has availability during the workday. I also don't know the time commitment it's going to be, but I would expect at least a meeting a week, maybe less than that. But I'm really not sure about the time commitment, but expect it to be not just like once a month, probably more than that.
Councillor Kalanoan.
I just wanted to put forward my expression of interest and maybe explain for 30 seconds why I did so. So, I mean, I have experience negotiating insurance contracts for not-for-profits. I have negotiated insurance contracts for my local food bank, for several local sports associations throughout the year. And if anybody's ever run a sports association, you can know how much of a liability insurance can be. And then on the other hand of things, my public policy experience is very much geared to healthcare. I have served currently as the chair of our community of care planning network here in my small town, which is very much concerned with the administration of hospital health and dental plans. So this is right up my alley. And I'm also very familiar with student care and the services we provide to students, as I've spoken to lots of different classes in our school about what the student care plan is and basically what it provides for students. So I am happy to take the time commitment and do this. I think it would be a great opportunity for me to expand my base knowledge of the healthcare and insurance sector a little bit. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, Councillor Kalanoan. And just provide an update. It is 1-1 Oilers Panthers. So
I was going to do a point of information, Mr. Speaker, that there was a high sticking penalty, and then there was.
Oh, okay.
I was, but never mind.
Moving on, do we have anyone else volunteering for the role of candidate for this committee? Okay. We'll now motion to amend the motion to include Councillor. Sorry, Councillor Dana. Do you have a point of order or comment? A mover? You're moving. Okay. So we have the motion to amend the motion to include Councillor Kalanoan to the committee. So I'll take Councillor Said Ahmed as the mover, and can I get a seconder? I'll get Councillor DeVoe. I see President Alfitori has her hand up. We're okay now? Okay. We'll now be going to a vote. Does all those in favor please raise your hand? Okay, all those in favor please lower your hand. All those against please raise your hand. Okay, seeing as there are none, the motion to amend Councillor Kalanoan to the motion is passed. We'll now vote on the actual motion itself. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those against, please, all those for, please lower your hands. All those against, please raise your hands. Okay, fantastic. This motion is carried. Next up, we have the motion for presentation on CUSA's full-time organizational structure and compensation, C-12. Whereas CUSA employs a significant number of full-time staff to support the organization, and whereas salaries comprise a major association for the association, and whereas the organization is experiencing financial strains, and whereas it is important for the council to understand the structure and responsibilities of these full-time positions, and whereas transparency around staff salaries is crucial for accountability. Be it resolved that the VP Finance create a presentation outlining the organization of the full-time positions and the responsibilities within the organization. Be it further resolved that a presentation also includes the salaries associated with each full-time position. Be it further resolved that this be presented at the next council meeting. Do I have a mover? Fantastic, Councillor Khan. Do I have a seconder? And I will take Councillor Akif. Does anyone wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Khan.
Hi, everyone. So earlier in the council training slides, we saw the organizational chart that showed the groups of members in CUSA. And for the board of directors and the executive team, we can find information about each member on the CUSA website. And even like each of us counselors have our names on the website. But the only group of members which I couldn't find any information for were the senior management and the full-time positions. And I understand that this is more of an administrative side of CUSA, related to like the business managing and everything, but we don't have any information, or at least I couldn't find information on what kind of roles there are, who's filling these roles, what the salaries are, or even the number of full-time roles that there are. So for transparency, I was just pushing this motion so that we could get information regarding this, maybe in a future presentation. I think it'd be good for our understanding of how the organization works. So I was just pushing that maybe a presentation could be given that detailed the descriptions of what these roles do, and also how much of the budget is being allocated for these roles as well. So including like what the salaries of each of those positions would be.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. We'll now go to VP Internal, Aiden Vocek.
Yeah. I won't speak about the merits of this. If you want to vote this through, go ahead. I'll only say if it passes, we can definitely share this information. However, I'm 90% certain it'll have to all be done in camera. In camera basically means that it is not publicly available, in terms that we would stop the recording and anyone who's not a voting member or expressly allowed to stay will leave. This information can be given to counselors. However, because it's a lot of people's personal salaries, I have to check with their HR director, but I'm sure there's definitely concerns around like legal concerns around disclosing people's salaries like that. I'd have to check with them, but this is definitely a presentation that can be made. I just want to make sure, explaining the expectations here, that there's a pretty good chance that this information would not be included in the minutes, and it wouldn't be recorded and uploaded to the website where all their salaries would be clear. We can let you all know this. They would probably have to be done in camera. Hoping that's okay.
Councillor Khan, do you have an answer to the question?
No, yeah, that's good. That's good.
Councillor Said Ahmed.
Hi, so I just have a quick question. So if this is not going to make it onto the website, or like the website, and it's not public information, and salaries are considered like private information, and it's not it's not privy to just being discussed, why do we want to know what the salaries are? I understand why we know the salaries of our VPs, because VPs and presidents is because they are elected by us and they are representative of the student population, which is why I think we should have accountability when it comes to VPs and presidents. I don't know why that extends to full-time staff, considering they are not representative of the student population and are just employees of the organization. I would just like a little bit of clarification around that, and I'm not really quite seeing the point of us knowing those numbers. It's not like we are going to fire any of the full-time staff or anything like that. Like, what is the reason for us knowing these numbers?
Does anyone wish to speak on this question? We're gonna go with President Alfitori.
It's just to add on to what Dana said. In the budget, we have under each budget line like how much each department costs, and it has like the employee salary are like integrated into that. But I also sent a link for all of the staff. It shows all of the staff on the CUSA website there. I know parts of the website are harder to navigate than others, but they all are available there. Something else is that we all of our employees except for the senior management team are unionized. So the longer that they're in the union, the more they're getting paid. So sometimes from an external perspective, it's harder to understand why each person because you're just looking at them as a role, not as a person who's been in this organization for a while, is getting paid a certain amount. But sometimes it's because like we've had staff that are here for over 30 years. So obviously they're getting paid more than what the average person would get in that role, but that's due to the union. So yeah, I think it's just a little bit more complex, and I kind of agree with Dana in which I don't see the benefit of having each individual staff salary, whereas we could just talk about how much each department is costing us staffing wise, which I think could have more benefit.
Councillor Cullinan.
Through the speaker, if I might ask our VP Internal a question, what is the mandate of council as it pertains to full-time staff here? Are we, like, to what extent does council's powers extend to you know, take the actions of full-time staff and mold them to what council wants to do? Do we even have the authority to do that? Maybe this question would be, maybe this whole motion would be better addressed if we had a sense for the exact scope of council's responsibility as it relates to full-time staff, because it's not something I think we've really talked about that much.
VP Internal Wojcik.
Fantastic question. You are free to direct the full-time staff to do whatever you like. You do it probably through our director of operations, because he ultimately is responsible for overseeing all of the staff. So he's kind of would be our point person. If you wanted to direct the staff to do anything, we can. In terms of like HR, human resources sides of things, that falls to the board. So yeah, we can direct the staff to do things. We're well within our power to do that. But in terms of like overseeing, disciplining, over like that kind of side of things, because they're employees, they fall to the board. We would not be able to, force the board to fire somebody. We could ask them to, but if they didn't go the route we wanted to, our only recourse would be to either say okay or to fire the board. We don't really have any we don't have any control over what the board does. They serve at our pleasure though. So if it's a case of if they ever make a decision we're not comfortable with, we remove the board. Did that answer your question?
Councillor Cullinan.
Yeah, I believe it does. And maybe just off of a follow-up point, then perhaps a presentation like this at the discretion of the director of operations, if it does happen, comes from the director of operations. If they seem to be our primary point of contact between full-time staff and council's relationship with full-time staff, then I think if we're going to go through something like this, I think it's most valuable that maybe they're here, and if they have the time commitment, they're able to present on that.
I'm going to go with Councillor Hussein, just because I know he had his hands up a couple of times already.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone, first of all, for pretty good conversation. I think, and first of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Khan for bringing this forward. I think it is a good thing to bring to everyone's awareness, and I think it's a conversation worth having, because in my opinion, wherever there's a significant amount of student money going, there should be, I think, some awareness. And I think, and I know President Alfatori placed the organization or the full-time staff list there, but I think I would appreciate as well maybe like an organization chart, seeing who each person responds to, how it works, because if we want to direct the full-time staff, I think we should better understand how they play into cooperation with the execs. And I think this sort of presentation would definitely be beneficial in that regard. I totally understand some of the folks' concerns about maybe listing people's individual salaries, but I don't think listing the departmental salaries or the costs for salaries on a departmental basis wouldn't necessarily be a negative thing. And I think that would actually just open up that conversation for us to have, and maybe to talk to the board about where is this something that is there too much in terms of like maybe we can better understand why it's that way and what can be done to maybe change that if that's a conversation that council wants to have. But I do think it's worth having for our awareness. So overall, I'd say I'm probably going to support this, but I think I would just amend maybe that one part to specify the department expenses rather than individual.
Thank you, Councillor Hussein. Are you looking to amend officially the motion?
Sure. What's the procedure for that? Sorry, I'm not too aware.
I will refer to Vice President Internal Aiden Rolchek.
This is a great learning moment. Basically, at any point, you'll just go, I move that we amend the motion and then insert whatever you want to say. So in this case, you might be like, I want to amend the motion to replace VP Finance with Director of Operations. And then that would be a motion that we debate and vote on. And then maybe we would amend, we do it as a bunch, as a group and amend everything, because then we can get out of here and keep watching the game. So you would just go, I move to amend the motion at hand, and then insert whatever you want to do.
I know Jaden DeVoe is calling the question. So Jaden, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just think that this debate isn't really serving us. I think it's fine I would just like to call the question. I would just like to vote on the motion as it is.
President Alfatori.
I think there's definitely benefit in understanding that
Right, point of order.
Vice President Internal Rolchek.
Councilor DeVoe called the question, so we have to vote now on whether we want to call the question or not. So just for a reminder, good job using that procedure, by the way. Calling the question stops debate exactly where it is, and there's a vote now, and if 2/3 agree, all debate ceased, and we just vote on it as is.
Okay, we will now proceed with a vote for the call of motion by Councilor DeVoe. All those in favor to call the motion and stop any debates, please raise your hand. Okay, all those in favor, please lower your hand. All those against, please raise your hand. Okay. Seeing as the majority of council voted yes, we'll now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vice President Internal.
It's 2/3 required, so
2/3, okay.
10 in favor, 4 against. I think quorum is 17. I'm not sure if that actually passed.
2/3 of 17 is around 12.
Let me get the exact number because I think it will be close. Apologies, mental math. You didn't elect me for my mental math.
2/3 of 17 would be 11.3. So would you round down?
With proxies, quorum is 9. It's, I believe 18.
It's
So that's
18 or
12.
17. So that's
If not, I didn't count the president and raw votes. So I think regardless, it doesn't pass.
Okay. So the call, thank you, Vice President Internal Rolchek. In this case, actually, we have Councillor Emma. Do you have any points to make? Okay, I'll assume there's none. In this case, we'll keep going on the debate itself. President Alfatori.
Yeah, so as I was saying, I think that there's definitely a benefit to understanding how much each department spends. I think in terms of transparency, it's something that I feel students should know since students are paying for the CUSA fee. But again, I think because almost all of our staff, except for a senior management team, is within a union. And each union we have to deal with in different ways and things change. It's just a lot more complicated to understand than just like from an external perspective looking at each salary. So I think a departmental review is less personal and gives students that transparency and that accountability. And then if they require like further insight into like a specific department, maybe having like a motion later on to look at those specific individuals.
Councillor Said Ahmed.
Yes, so I don't know if I maybe misunderstood this or I have a weird understanding of this, but the suggestion that we should just look at it by departmental that was initially brought up by Councillor Hussein, I believe. President Nofaturi had said earlier that this is available on the budget, in the budget on the website per department, and it's separated that way. I don't know if I can ask for further clarification from VP Finance, Easby. And maybe I'm pretty sure that is available. And if so, I don't see the point of re-amending this motion to re-put it forward to refine that number when it's available in the budget. I might be hyper simplifying it. Please provide me with further context if I am, please. Thank you.
VP Finance, do you have any comments?
Sam isn't feeling well today, so he's actually working from home all day. But if you don't mind, I can take the question.
Go for it.
Okay, so yeah, I think at least from our end of the budget, it's clear how much each department spends in terms of employees. I don't know how clear it is on the student side, like when you look at it from a student perspective. So it's definitely something that is important to clarify. But in terms of having, it would still be important in this motion because in terms of having like the director of operations to come and give this presentation and talk about what each department does, and which staff are in each department, and then talk about how much is allocated to each department. I think having those in conjunction serves its benefit, so it's easier to understand. This is what this department does, this is how much it costs, and this is their benefit, instead of just having it separately on the budget and not including it in this. Versus, yeah.
Councillor Bruni.
I'd like to amend the motion, and I'd like to strike the second be it resolved clause, so that be it further resolved that the presentation also include the salaries associated with each full-time position.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Dana. Do I have a seconder? Councillor De Oliveira Borba. Does anybody wish to speak on this amendment to strike the second, the first, be it further resolved? We'll start off with Councillor Bruni.
Yeah, I think based on the conversations we've had, we can gather up at least where the amount of budget is allocated for salaries for each department in the actual CUSA budget. I just think that this be resolved clause opens us up for a lot, many cans of worms, basically, with unions and with how the next council meeting is going to go. I think it's great. The rest of the motion is great, and based on the debate we've had, I think it's safe to say that we are in agreement about the rest of the motion, but this causes us way too many issues, and it's best to kind of focus in the scope of this motion.
Councillor Kellanoan.
Yeah, so I agree with that in principle. I might want to suggest a counter amendment, and if we got to vote on that first, I'm just going to put it out there. I don't want it voted on at this time, but I'm thinking because I see that the goal of this motion, as indicated by the councilors, is to get a sense of CUSA's financial strengths, and I appreciate that goal. I think it's a good one, and a good one where council can to some degree have some accountability and be a voice there. So what I would do, instead of striking the second, be it further resolved, I would say instead of including the salaries associated with each full-time position, I would say include the total operating budget associated with each department of full-time staff. And then that information is already public, but having it in the presentation as included as part of last year's budget would be very helpful for councillors if we do want to examine that in a bit more detail. So that's what I would suggest, but I'm open to interpretations there.
Just first, at this time, we're just going to try to stick on the actual amendment at play here. So Councillor Bruni, unless you have a comment about your own amendment, we're going to start off with that first. And just before, I will just take into account VP Internals Rochek's point of order, I believe.
Well, I just wanted to speak quickly. I'm very
okay, sure. 20 seconds.
Let's just strike the clause. You're all here. We'll just tell Sam, hey, we'd like the departmental salary costs added into the presentation. I mean, and we can just tell him this. He's here. I'm sure Sam has no problem with including that in the We don't have to go through the motion process all over again. If he doesn't do it, you were all here. We all expressed that we'd want it. I think we can just ask him to do it nicely. Let's just strike the line, vote on this motion.
Thanks,
And
Sam.
If
I'll just
that's
make- I'll
done,
make
that's
sure you
fine. I'll
vote.
strike what I said.
Okay, so if there are no further discussions for this amendment, we will pass to a vote to strike the first be it further resolved. So the be it further resolved that the presentation also include the salaries associated with each full-time position. Can I have a mover? Councillor Syed Ahmed, is that a mover? Okay, thank you. And seconder, Councillor Bruni. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, all those in favor, please lower your hand. All those against, please raise your hand. Seeing as a none, this amendment passes. We'll now be going back to the actual motion itself. I do want to remind Councillor Kalinoan and Councillor Syed Ahmed that you guys already spoke twice. And if you do decide to speak more than twice, we will have to essentially pass a vote to take the rules out. That being said, do we have any further comments on the actual motion itself? Okay, great. We'll now be going President Alfatori.
Are we still gonna change the VP Finance presentation to the Director of Operations, or is that not what people want?
That is up if there's a councillor wishing to
That
propose
is
this
important
amendment.
to know that the VP Finance is not as understanding about each department or like who works in each department the same as like the Director of Operations who's in charge of all of these people and works with them on a day-to-day. So I think having him prepare the presentation and explain it would encourage that transparency, because I don't think Sam would be able to answer the same questions as, actually they're both called Sam, as other Sam, so.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Bruni.
Motion to amend the first be it resolved clause to replace VP Finance with Director of Operations.
Okay, do I have a mover for this? Councillor Kalinoan, and a seconder, I'll take Councillor Khan. So this amendment, does anybody want to talk on it, or is it pretty straightforward? Everybody's good to go. Everybody's good to go. Great. So we'll now be going through a vote. All those in favor to strike out VP Finance and replace it with a Director of Operations, please raise your hand. Okay. All those in favor, please lower your hand. All those against, please raise your hand. Okay, great. This amendment passes. Now we're back on the actual motion itself. And note that Councillor Bruni, you're also at twice now. So just watch out for that. Does anybody else want to speak on this motion? Are we good to go for a vote? All right. We'll now be going to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. All those in favor, please lower your hand. All those against, please raise your hand. All right, fantastic. This motion now is carried. Now we're on to the favorite motion of the day, which is adjournment. Motion to adjourn to a specific time, C13. I see we already have a mover, which is Councillor Kalinoan. And actually, I'll read the be it resolved first. I'm sorry, guys. Be it resolved that council adjourns until 6 p.m. the 26th of August, and that this shall constitute for the purposes of the Act and our bylaws prior notice. We already have a mover. Our seconder, I'll take Councillor Bruni. On this note, let's hope the Oilers win. Knock on wood. I'm actually knocking on wood. And I wish all of you guys a great rest of the evening. And I don't know if anybody else, Councillor VP Internal Rochek, any comments? Good?
Let's quickly say it. As per our standing orders, we don't need to vote on motions to adjourn at the end of the agenda. As long as it's moved and seconded, it just auto passes. So in case people were wondering why there wasn't a vote there. That's all. Keep looking at your emails. The motion is right. 26th of August is your next council meeting. Agenda will be sent out the Friday before. If you have motions, send them to me. Fill out the advocacy concern form. I'm going to send out 2 other forms for you guys to fill out. But we had met quorum. We had a council-led motion, and we're done in just about 3 hours, which is fast for a council meeting. Good job, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, all.
You're
Have a great
great.
night.
Good job, everyone. Enjoy the game.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Night, y'all.
Actually, I'm just actually at the. You want to stick around, Mark?
Yeah. Oh my God.